Hey guys! This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was in Frozen. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start! Chapter 11. Why do snowmen like warm hugs? Arendelle Castle was quiet and cold, the winter night blanketing everything in darkness, yet some residents found it difficult to sleep. Chief among these individuals was Elsa, who found herself restlessly sat on the side of her bed. The pale moonlight shining down on her form, having given up on trying to fall asleep. Placing her naked feet on the cold floor, she stood up and began stretching her lithe body in the hopes of relieve some tension. Finding no relief for her stiff muscles from the almost day-long sled riding, the queen thought about asking Naruto, in the morning, if he could help ease some of the strain with his heat and a massage. Only for her to stop and sigh as she remembered that Naruto wasn't in the castle, and with any luck his body heat would be lowered significantly when he did return. Meaning that after a hard day of being queen she wouldn't be able to enjoy any more hot back rubs. Giving up on her train of thought, for now at least, the young woman strode over to the window of her bedroom. Drawing the curtain farther back to let the moonlight glisten on her skin, casting her silhouette against the far wall. She felt breeze through the glass, sending a soft shudder down her frame. Perhaps the window had lost its seal, causing a chill in the room, which was why she was unable to sleep. The staff would have to be told in the morning, but for the time being Elsa felt she could go for a walk around the castle, possibly finding herself a vacant room. Pulling on a dressing gown, she opened the door and walked into a hallway, the soft carpet keeping her still bare feet warm. While the castle was dark, the queen guided herself by memories. Long past moments of her youth running up and down the corridors with Anna as the two of them explored their home. Partway down a hall, past Anna's room, Elsa felt another chill as she walked by a door. The open window inside the room being the most likely culprit for the draft, although why it hadn't been closed for the winter left her confused. However, the answer came to her when she entered, and realized that it was her old room where Naruto had stayed. The staff had probably forgotten to close the window that was left open to help cool down their blonde guest. Thus she found herself sealing up the room to increase the temperature a bit, even going so far as to light a small fire in the seldom used fireplace. A few short hours ago such an act would have defeated the purpose of trying to cool Naruto down, but now brought a warmth to the stone castle. Not wanting to leave the fire unattended, Elsa took a seat behind her desk. She considered moving the heavy piece of furniture out of the room, now that she no longer needed to keep an eye on her fellow blonde, but found herself hesitate as she looked to the empty ice bed. Perhaps she could discuss it with Naruto when he returned. This was more his room than her makeshift office after all. With her decision made, she sunk into her high-backed chair as she closed her eyes in comfort. While sleep still eluded her, there was a comforting presence about the room that helped ease her mind. After some time had passed, she reopened her eyes, a feeling of refreshment washing over her. Finding herself still sat at her desk, but with no desire to get any work done, she passed the time by once again reading through the Japanese dictionary that she had bought several months ago. Having read it cover to cover several times, she still put forth time to try and memorize more of the foreign words. As the night dragged on, she continued to flip through the pages for any word that might happen to catch her interest. Unfortunately, nothing caught her eye, and she gave up on reading for the moment. Once again reminded that the book was meant to help merchants speak with each other, not translate the whole language. The fact that she was unable to find the word for magic proved that fact nicely. A sudden crack startled the queen out of her thoughts as the fires she had been watching started to die, the dancing flames growing smaller, before receding into embers with a final pop. With the once cold room returned to a decent temperature, Elsa closed her book and stood up. Trying to stifle a yawn, she looked towards the ice bed and, not wanting to walk more than she had to, considered staying in the room for the night. A thought that was quickly discarded, as the staff would worry in the morning if they couldn't find her in her usual bed. Plus, she had left her room to avoid the cold, not sleep on it. Walk around her desk, she made sure the fire was completely gone before she left. As she was leaving, she sent a blast of frost to the bed, purely on instinct, to make sure it stayed frozen. Not even realizing what she had done, she closed the door behind her. With nothing left to distract her, Elsa returned to her room. A familiar chill greeted her as she approached her bed. Pulling off her robe, and carelessly tossing it onto a nearby chair, she slipped between the covers, and fell asleep almost instantly. Yet one final thought entered her mind before she began to dream. She missed Naruto. Break. Anna was dancing through the castle halls as she looked around for her sister, who was currently missing lunch. The throne was empty and she hadn't been in her own bedroom. So, logically, she must be in Naruto's bedroom, which just so happened to serve as the queen's office. Landing in front of the partially open door with a flourish, Anna knocked and entered. "Hey Elsa!" the cheerful girl sang out. "Good morning, Anna," the queen replied tiredly, her eyes giving away her lack of sleep the night before. "Actually, it's afternoon, and your lunch is getting cold," the redhead corrected her sister. The queen immediately turned to look out the window at the bright snowy day. The sun slightly past its highest point, and already beginning the slow journey downward. "I didn't realize it was so late," she said. "It's fine," the princess replied with a sweet smile as she followed her sister's gaze. "You look tired," she pointed out, as she moved farther in. "I had some trouble falling asleep last night," the blonde replied, softly rubbing her dreary eyes. "It did seem extra chilly last night," Anna said, watching the snow-filled fields through the window as she rubbed her arms together for warmth. "I heard a lot of the staff talking about how cold it was. The window was left open in here last night," Elsa stated. "We'll have to ask the staff to check every room and make sure the castle is sealed tight." The red-headed princess gave a nod as she continued to watch the snow. She turned to her sister. A smile started to stretch across her lips as a wonderful idea came to her. "Do you want to build a snowman?" By the time the sisters made it back inside the castle, the courtyard was littered with snowmen, and Elsa's lunch had gone cold, needing to be replaced with a simple meal from the kitchen. Although the staff were grateful that the queen had stopped by, given their current problem. Apparently all the chefs were so used to having Naruto around that the usual amount of ramen had been made, but there was now no one to eat it all. While Elsa was busy trying to think of the logistics of sending the noodle soup to Naruto via Kristoff's sled, Anna came up with a better idea. Invite all the orphans over and let them have the food. It would certainly make them smile, and since it was Anna's idea, Elsa felt that it should be her sister to go and tell all the energetic children that they would be dining in the castle that night, just like they did while the new orphanage was being built. Until then, Elsa was going to finish some paperwork before their guests arrive. So later that evening, a horde of children were seen charging through the streets, a smiling princess running beside them the whole way, the large group only coming to a stop once they got over the castle's bridge, where a garden of snowmen silently waited for them. "There are so many snowmen," the ever-outgoing Ingrid yelled, seeming to skate between each creation. "And every one of them loves warm hugs," an excited Anna cheered. "Do all snowmen love warm hugs?" a bright-eyed boy asked. "Well, all the ones made by Elsa do," was the princess' response. As children often do, questions of how and why soon followed, leaving Anna lost for words. While she knew that Olaf liked warm hugs, she couldn't seem to remember where that fact came from. A creeping fear about her magically altered memories began to appear. The children's inquiry was interrupted by the arrival of the orphanage keepers. Many of the older caretakers, including the matron, had chosen to turn down dinner at the castle to have a quiet night by themselves. "Thank you for guiding the children here, Princess Anna," a young attendant casually said between labored breaths. The other chaperones, while equally as winded, smiled happily as the children danced among the snow sculptures. After nearly 10 minutes, everyone had been herded into the castle. It took so long that Elsa had finished her work and was waiting for everyone inside. Of course, all the children and caretakers bowed as soon as they saw her. Even Ingrid knelt down before the queen, but quickly jumped up and flashing a large toothy smile, which Elsa found eerily similar to an absent blonde. Although the little girl did relieve some of the loneliness that had been present all day. Anna stood near the back, having been the last person inside, watching with a smile as everyone tried to show as much respect to her sister as possible. Her smile dropped slightly as thoughts drifted towards a desire for them to show her the same respect, but she quickly banished the thoughts. Content with the townspeople's smile over their bent forms, part of the perks of being the princess instead of the queen, she guessed. "Queen Elsa," Ingrid said, calling attention to herself. "Why do snowmen like warm hugs?" Many of the children's heads popped up, each wanting to know the answer just as much, while the caretakers looked at each other in confusion, as none of them had been present for the initial question. Elsa, for her part, was just as confused, looking towards Anna in curiosity as to why they would ask her instead of the outgoing princess. "Sorry, I don't remember at all," the redhead replied, curious if it had anything to do with her missing memories. Elsa was quiet for a few seconds before she started trying to stifle a giggle behind her own hand. Of course you wouldn't remember. You were only 2 years old when it happened, the Queen stated with a large smile. Retreating deeper into the entrance hall, and making sure that everyone was following her to the warmer interior, Elsa took a seat on a lone couch beside a set of stairs. The children all gathered around her, eager to hear a story from the Queen. Many years ago, Princess Anna and I went out into the snow to make a snowman. The icy beauty started softly, a happy smile at the children's large stares. But no matter what we tried, we couldn't keep the snow from falling over. So we went into the kitchen to find something to build up our snowman around. We found a long stick with a metal tip, what would be perfect to stick in the ground. All the onlookers were silent, enraptured by the story. Elsa, wanting to add a bit more whimsy to the tale, held out her hand. And pinching the air just above her palm, pulled up, creating a small snowman in her hand which all the children crowded around to see. Unfortunately, we had taken the coal shovel for the stove, and the kitchen staff couldn't work with how cold it was. Our mother had to come out and try to convince us that we needed to take down the snowman, so the shovel could be returned. Of course, little Anna refused to destroy our creation. The elder sister stated with a sly smirk at her sibling. You said I was too. The redhead countered, embarrassed by the comment. Although the more the story progressed, the more relieved she felt that this memory had not been changed with magic, but instead had been forgotten in the same old non-magical way most memories are lost. With the princess interruption, Elsa took some time to create more of a snowy scene in her palm, adding the 2 young sisters and their mother around the snowman. A sudden shifting on the couch made the Queen realize that Ingrid had taken up a seat next to her, staring at the handheld winter wonderland intently with everyone else. Elsa could only smile at the outgoing girl. Our mother told us that we had to separate the shovel from our snowman, because the snow would want to stay outside in the cold, but the shovel would want to go inside where it was warm. So Anna said that she would come outside every day to give the snowman a warm hug to keep the shovel happy while the snow stayed outside. In the end, the snowman was left up, and we had to go into town to buy a new coal shovel for the kitchen. So every morning Anna would race outside to give the snowman a great warm hug. Elsa took a break for a few seconds while she looked at the children all smiling at the tale. And those hugs were so great and warm that the snowman told all the other snowmen about how good warm hugs were, and that is why snowmen like warm hugs. The children all stood and cheered, dancing around at the story, and pleading with the caretakers to take them back outside so they too could hug the snowmen in the courtyard. Thankfully, before any of them could try and head into the cold, the doors swung open and a snow-covered Kristoff and Sven walked in, quickly getting inside where it was warm. Anna raced over to her boyfriend, and heedless of his frozen clothes gave him one of her, now famous, warm hugs, something the ice harvester accepted with gratitude. Sven just wandered off to find a nice fireplace. What's with all the kids? Kristoff asked, having moved closer to the group. The kitchen made Naruto-sized portions by mistake, and we thought the orphans would like to come back for a nice meal, Anna replied, stationed next to her boyfriend. Speaking of, I've got a report on our favorite blonde, the gruff man said until he looked towards Elsa. Second favorite, he amended, not wanting to insult the Queen, before taking off his cap and looking up at his own hair. Third favorite. You can tell us over dinner, Elsa said with a chuckle, looking over the children still gathered around her. I think it's time for everyone to go wash up before we eat. Although many of the children groaned and huffed, all of them hurried off to get ready for dinner. Ingrid and Elsa sharded a large smile before the young girl followed after her friends, while Anna and Kristoff joined the caretakers in herding the children towards the nearest washrooms, leaving Elsa alone. The Queen's palm was still filled with the miniature snowy scene. A quick thought was all it took for everything to change, as a replica of the ice palace rose up, with 2 figures standing in front of the structure. One a man and the other a woman, their fists touching, the same as hers and Naruto's had yesterday when they said goodnight, as had become their secret tradition over the past few months. Dismissing the scene from her hand, Elsa stood and walked towards the kitchen, eager to hear how her friend was faring on the mountain. Hopefully he had cooled down a little. Chapter 12. Rumblings on the Cold Mountain. The morning sun glistened off the snow from the highest peak of the northern mountain. Elsa's ice palace sparkled as the rays passed through the open windows and onto the face marshmallow, the snow giant slowly moving from where it had laid down to rest the night before. It only took a few minutes for the creature to stand and begin to move around the palace. checking every room to make sure that everything its mistress had made was intact and in place. Which, of course, everything was just as it had been last night. The palace's guardian did this every morning and evening, having little else to do on top of the mountain besides keep everything tidy. At least until the snow geese showed up and turned each day into an unscripted parade. Of course, Olaf's frequent visits were also unpredictable. The fact that one of those visits happened to be when he brought the snow geese to the mountain peak was not lost on the golem. A fact that never failed to make Marshmallow smile, having immediately become attached to all of its siblings. The one thing that was different about the palace was last night's new addition, Naruto, who had spent his time exploring the palace before going to bed. The long journey to the mountaintop must have tired him out given how quickly he fell asleep, yet found the energy to disappear before the giant woke up. The soft colossus looked around a few side rooms of the palace, but had little luck in finding the new addition. Only when it opened the doors leading outside was it evident where the guest had gone. Given the army of clones that now roamed around the snowy expanse before the palace, the giant snow creature nodded its head, happy to have found the blonde its mistress was interested in. The numerous copies of the blonde did worry the golem for a bit, but remembering their fight from the previous evening, Marshmallow wasn't too worried by the sudden increase of guests. Figuring they would be gone just as abruptly as they appeared, Naruto had been hard at work since before the sun had come up. After having stuck to basic physical conditioning for the past 6 months, he was ready to get back to serious training. While he had been holding off from training in the hope that his chakra would heal his overheating problem, it was really boring. While Elsa had, thankfully, been there to keep him company, he still found himself wanting to go out and do something. However, his caretakers were adamant that he needed to rest, enabling him in his belief that he shouldn't be using too much of his chakra. Hopefully that stone troll guy would be correct, and he would start healing once he began using chakra again. The sooner he started feeling better, the sooner he could get back to the castle. Even though it had just been a single night, he missed seeing Elsa every morning, and he had promised to play more games with Ingrid and the other children. So before the sun even came up, the blonde was already outside, warmed up, and ready to start wasting chakra. With his desires solidified, the blonde started training as soon as he woke up. He started by summoning several groups of shadow clones once he was outside, not wanting to cause any damage by getting started inside the ice palace. Having created the clones more to waste chakra than for any real reason, Naruto let each of them do as they pleased, with some of them starting to spar against each other, while others immediately began channeling chakra, enjoying the familiar warmth of their internal energy. And that was how most of the morning went, as copies of the blonde kept practicing, with the original joining a group in their activity before moving on to join another. Eventually the sun was high enough to start the morning in earnest, and the doors to the ice palace swung open, letting out Marshmallow, who stayed by the doors before beckoning the shinobi inside. With the sudden appearance of the snow golem, Naruto's stomach took that moment to release a loud growl. A reminder that he couldn't live on training alone, and need breakfast. Something he was eager to get to. He was curious about what kind of food the trolls had packed for him. Taking the stairs 2 at a time, the blonde rushed back towards the grand doors of the ice palace, only to forcefully come to a stop when Marshmallow barred his entrance. The snow golem looking pointedly at the delicate steps of ice that now had a footprint melted into every other one. Naruto, having taken off his shoes before he began training, as well as his shirt and jacket, had forgotten to grab his clothes from the base of the stairs. A fact that left him with a deep blush on his face, as he rocketed back to the pile of clothes in a single jump. Landing and dressing quickly, Naruto returned to the top of the stairs, self-conscious of the indents his excessive body heat had made on his previous ascent, and hoping that Elsa was forgiving when she inevitably found out what he had done to her pristine ice sculpture. Although with how kind and fair she was, he didn't think he would be given too harsh of a punishment. Breakfast was a less chaotic event than the blonde had expected. Having met the residents of the palace, and knowing how many there were, he had expected things to be an out-of-control mess with the snow geese constantly running around. While the tiny snow creatures were running through the entire palace, causing trouble, they mostly kept to their routines, and left the blonde alone. At least until he was finished eating. By that point the snow geese couldn't stay away from him, and trailed behind as he began to explore the icy mansion. At first, Naruto found it unsettling to be followed around by a tidal wave of snow, but eventually he grew accustomed to the company. Though he did try to be friendly with the braver ones that would walk beside him, he made the effort to keep some distance so he wouldn't cause any of them to melt. This continued on as he walked around his new home for the foreseeable future, trying to get acquainted with the magnificent palace, and admiring the beauty of it. Awestruck by just how beautiful it was, perfectly matching the queen who built it. Eventually he grew restless from walking around the palace, and made his way back outside, where he continued to expel as much chakra as he could, which was a lot. By the time the sun had reached its peak, the blonde, and his clones, had cleared out a large portion of land in front of the palace's stairs, leaving a stone patio on top of the mountain. It was during a spar with a clone, while Naruto was created a Rasengan, that the displaced ninja heard another growl. Thinking himself to be hungry again, he sat down, ate something, and got back to training, only to hear another rumble. Realizing that it wasn't his stomach, and getting worried, he began to look around. While he didn't know a lot about mountains, he had been on enough missions to know what bad things could happen on one. Mainly an avalanche. With an army of clones searching the entire mountain top, it wasn't long before Naruto found out what was wrong. Nothing. No matter where he searched, there was nothing that looked like it might have caused the loud noises. There were no snowy overhangs that might fall down any second. He couldn't find any fissures that were about to swallow everything up. In fact, the worst he did find were 2 trees that had fallen over from the weight of their snow-coated branches. Yet the sounds continued to grow louder and more frequent the longer he searched, which caused him to grow more concerned, leading him to summon more clones to search even more of the mountain. And still the sounds continued to grow louder and longer as he searched. With nothing to go on but a sound, and some growing paranoia, Naruto returned to the front of the palace, where he decided to do something that his many teachers had been trying to get him to do for years. He sat down and tried to think about what to do. Maybe all that time he spent with Elsa was doing him some good. For almost half an hour, Naruto sat on the ground, unable to think of anything that might help him. Instead, he ended up spending most of the time resting from his earlier search, regaining a bit of the chakra he had exhausted. As his break continued, Naruto noted that the once loud rumblings had quieted down. Where once they had occurred at erratic intervals, now the growling was low and constant, almost rhythmic in nature, like someone's breathing was evening out just before they woke up. Suddenly one last roar was heard, louder than any of the others so far. It had startled Naruto so much that before he even knew what happened, he was standing. The following silence unnerved the blonde, cautious of how quiet it was. It was so quiet, in fact, that there was nothing to block the sleepy sound that brought a smile to the ninja's face. Kid? Chapter 13. Warm Greeting to Old Friends. While Kristoff was accustomed to long rides in his sled, he wasn't used to consecutive rides over the course of a day. First he had to go to the ice fields, then back to the castle, and here he was finishing the last bit of his journey to the ice palace, where Naruto was staying. And he still had to make it back down the mountain. It had already been an exhausting day so far, yet there was still so much to do. Rounding the last corner to reach the mountain top, the gruff man kept his eyes to what passed for a road, fully focusing on parking the sled. When he finally looked up at the full scale of the icy palace, he took some time to marvel at the wonder. Each tower stood tall and proud in the late afternoon sun, with the pure ice spires magnifying the cloud-painted sky behind them, casting rainbows of light across the frozen landscape, causing the shadows to leap around in a dance of erratic joy. To the ice harvester it was just as perfect a sight as the first time he had seen the palace. A perfect monument to the material he loved so much, that never failed to captivate him. Even now, keeping him within a trance until his reindeer partner bumped into him with a concerned snort. Looking towards Sven, with a bit of annoyance, Kristoff tried to find out why he had just been broken from his awe-induced stupor. Yet the reindeer only stared forward in a similar fashion to the ice harvester. Following the large animal's gaze, Kristoff finally saw where his fellow blonde was. Sitting on the ground, motionless to the point that several birds had settled within his hair, was Naruto. The unnatural heat from his body being the only thing that kept him from being buried in the falling snow. And a small, almost eerily absent, movement of his chest was the only sign that the blonde was still alive. Kristoff immediately began running towards the seemingly dead man. A strike of panic coursing through his body. Naruto's smile was wide and bright, a stark contrast to the murky surroundings of his own mindscape. Kurama's normally fierce expression was replaced with half-closed eyes as the fox's head rested on the ground. Its slow rhythmic breathing gave away just how tired the giant beast was, having only just woken up from a long slumber. I'm glad you're awake, Naruto practically yelled out. I'm glad to be awake too, Kurama replied, trying to keep a superior tone despite being exhausted. And I guess I'm glad you're not dead. Naruto chuckled in return. While he had only befriended the Bijou for a short time during the war, he could tell that the Bijou was just acting disinterested, merely falling back into old habits. With a large smile, the blonde held up his hand towards the fox, and with no bars between them, Kurama easily pushed its own fist against Naruto's own. A loud laugh was shared between the two as they rejoiced at their reunion. How long have I been asleep? The Bijou asked once both of them had fallen silent. About half a year. The blonde guesses out loud, not having paid attention to the passage of time while he had been in Arendelle. Mostly due to him being stuck in the castle for fear of hurting anyone. Why did it take you so long to wake me up? Kurama growled out in shock. Once you used enough chakra, so your body wasn't cooking itself, I should have woken up soon after. I wasn't really sure what was wrong with me when I woke up, so I decided not to use too much chakra until I healed. Naruto replied, scratching at the back of his head. Before I got knocked out, I told you that your body was using too much chakra, and we needed to get rid of as much of it as possible for you to survive. A loud yawn followed the Bijou's growled statement. Oh, I don't really remember a lot after the battle. Except for saying goodbye to everyone. A large grin spread across the blonde's face as he thought about his friends, happy in the knowledge that they were safe. Everything else is a bit hazy. Too tired to assault the boy for his stupidity, Kurama settled for shaking its large head in disbelief. Although the fox did take a second to sense the low temperature outside the blonde's mind. At least our luck held out, and you landed somewhere cold enough that all the extra chakra was used up just keeping you warm. Well, I only came to this mountain yesterday, but I'm told the trolls found me in the forest outside Arendelle. Thankfully Elsa was able to keep me cool and save my life. The blonde began to scratch at the back of his head at the thought of his friend. What are trolls, where is Arendelle, and who in the hell is Elsa? The beast questioned, confusion and intrigue holding off tiredness. Naruto spent the next hour recounting his adventures in the new world he had landed in, trying his best to describe all the important events that he had been a part of. Although every few minutes the blonde had to stop and let his vulpine partner release another earth-shaking yawn to stave off sleep. The duo did share a few laughs at some of Naruto's more idiotic moments. Specifically about him jumping into a burning building. It was really annoying trying to learn a new language. Naruto rambled on as he reached the end of his tale. At least Elsa and I can talk to each other now, so I guess it was worth it. Obviously, you respect this woman quite a lot if you're putting that much effort into learning how to talk with her. Kurama replied with a hidden smirk. Well yeah, she's super nice and I owe her so much. Plus she's my friend. I'm sure, the fox said, now extremely curious about the relationship between its container and this queen. Suddenly the Bijou stopped moving, sensing the world outside the seal. It seems someone else wants to talk to you. Go see what they want, while I go back to sleep and rest up, so I can yell at you for being stupid later. Any retort that Naruto might have had was wasted as the fox fell into a comfortable sleep, fully incapable of hearing anything the blonde might say. With nothing keeping him there, Naruto returned to the waking world. Waiting for the shinobi was Kristoff. A look of pure terror in the gruff man's eyes as he looked over his fellow. Naruto opened his own eyes. The ice harvester jumped back in shock, before sighing deeply as he massaged his weary face. Oh, thank all that is good and has antlers. The mountain man spoke in an exasperated voice. You were so still I thought you froze to death, and then when I got back to the castle Elsa was going to freeze me. The words were spoken too fast for Naruto to fully comprehend what his friend was saying, but it was clear that something had him upset. It was rather obvious given how frantically the ice harvester switched between rambling incoherently and trying to take calming breaths. This continued on for almost a minute before Sven walked up and physically bumped into the blonde to stop him. Before anything else could upset the mentally tired man, Naruto decided to bring him into the ice palace, where they could take their time going over anything that needed to be reported to Elsa, which kept the man calm for the few seconds it took to reach the steps, where the obvious footprints melted into the once pristine ice sent him into a round of questions. It took over an hour for Kristoff to check everything he needed to, before heading home, making sure that Naruto would have enough food and blankets to survive until his next visit. With his mind full of facts to tell Anna and Elsa, the extremely tired ice harvester loaded into his sled and waved his goodbyes, as he and Sven started down the mountain. However, once Kristoff was back at the castle, he was greeted with the entire Arendelle orphanage seated for dinner. While it was a very enjoyable meal of warm noodles and broth, it was a bit distracting. Finally, once everyone was full, he settled down to tell the royal sisters, plus one particular little girl, about the ninja's health. Outside of being tired from playing in the snow all day, I'm happy to say that he's just as active as ever, the ice harvester said to the bright smiles of all. While I was there, he and Marshmallow spent their time trying to corral all the snow geese. So those two are getting along well. He did choose to leave out the part about him thinking that Naruto had died. There was no reason to make anyone worry about something that even he didn't understand. When he had pressed Naruto about why he had been sitting so still, the shinobi was unable to properly explain what he had been doing. The only thing Kristoff had been able to understand was that his fellow blonde had been talking to a friend, however that was possible on the mountaintop. He should have enough food and supplies to last him a full week up there, but I plan to go back up again the day after tomorrow, he said, much to his own delight as his girlfriend wrapped herself around him in thanks for being such a great guy. The rest of the evening was spent herding the children back to the orphanage, before everyone turned in themselves. Although Kristoff couldn't shake the feeling that he had forgotten to mention something to Elsa. Back on top of the mountain, Naruto looked out the window at the damaged ice steps, hoping that Kristoff had remembered to tell Elsa about them. Chapter 14: Winter Festivals and Good Friends. Happy birthday, Elsa! Everyone yelled out as the queen stood behind a table with a massive chocolate cake. A large room in the castle was filled with a small group of people, most of them being staff members. While normally the birthday of a beloved ruler would be cause for mass celebration, Elsa had grown up preferring smaller, more intimate parties. This worked out for the best, since the July festival was only a few days away, during which the villagers were more than happy to give their best wishes. After the attendees had finished passing out slices of cake, the blonde queen took the time to look around at everyone. Her sister was darting around the room, making sure to talk with each guest at least once. Some of the staff had taken to tidying up, so they would have less to do later, while Olaf seemed to be everywhere at once. The final guest, a blonde man, stood off in a corner, and upon noticing her gaze, gave a light wave before going back to talking with his reindeer friend. Elsa let out a soft breath, happy to be surrounded by those she knew so well, but feeling like there was someone missing. A sudden gust of wintry air made very clear who wasn't there. The sun-like warmth of the absent man was missed by all who frequented the castle. Happy birthday! Anna called next to her sister, having finished her rounds. And happy half-birthday to you! Elsa returned with a half-smile. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that, the redhead said. But I'm happy where my birthday is. Not only is it opposite to yours, but I also get 2 sets of presents each year. Here the princess stopped and looked at the scant amount of wrapped gifts on a far table. While it's just easier to give you all your presents at Christmas, given how close your birthday is, it's not so bad to have a birthday so close to the holidays, Elsa said, her mind wandering to years past, as fond memories of her parents giving her a new toy during Anna's birthday, to keep things even, brought a smile to her lips. While more gifts would be nice, I don't think a queen should complain too much. True, Anna agreed, unable to counter the claim. But depending on when you get married, you could get anniversary present in the summer. The red-haired princess almost sang out. A deep flush stained Elsa's cheeks as she resisted the urge to cover her face, her sister having brought up one of the most embarrassing topics she had to deal with. Please, Anna, not you too. I already have enough people asking me about when I'll get married. Elsa resisted the urge to hold her head, just feeling happy that winter was here again, and she wouldn't have to deal with any foreign dignitaries asking about her love life. Although the topic of marriage did have one bright spot, the ability to tease her sister. Of course, I don't think you have any room to talk about marriage. The queen purposely turned her attention towards the blonde ice harvester on the other side of the room. Yeah. Anna coughed out, a flush matching her hair upon her cheeks. Some of the villagers have been way too forward in their inquiries. The princess was quiet again, looking anywhere but her boyfriend. Elsa stifled a chuckle at her sister's discomfort, before changing the topic to help ease the tension. Speaking of the villagers, how's our little surprise coming along? The sisters waited a second, casually noted that Olaf wasn't near them, and began speaking in hushed whispers about their upcoming plans. While most of the food will need to be prepared on the day of the feast, the chefs have already started making what they can, Anna said, recounting as what the staff had told her, and with the banquet being right after we ring the July bell, Everyone will be there. Elsa cheered, genuinely excited to give the people a gift of her own for the holidays. Anna's voice cut through her sister's giddiness. Everyone, except for one, will be there. The Queen deflated slightly, knowing full well who would be missing the party. As much as I want Naruto to be in attendance, I have to keep in mind the safety of everyone else. The blonde's shoulders sagged as she continued, not happy with the decision she had to make. With the entire village in one place, the chance that someone might bump into Naruto and burn themselves is too great a risk to take. Well, that's easy to fix, Anna stated. We'll just have him stand a little farther back from the main group. You know how much he loves to sit in the rafters of the castle. And what would be the point of bringing him to a party, if we don't let him join the party? Elsa asked, having already spent hours working through the problem in her head. It would be best to have him come down for the New Year celebration. Everyone should be a bit more spread out, and he can more easily avoid bumping into anyone. Anna listened, not having a good argument against her sister's idea. Although she was not pleased with the idea of spending the holidays without even one of her friends. Especially since this would be the first holiday she spent with Elsa, without a door between them. Not to mention that Kristoff, Sven, and Olaf would also be there, but the princess wanted to make sure that everyone had a great time. And knowing Elsa as well as she did, Anna was certain that her sister would be constantly worried about the blonde-haired man living in the mountains, and the Queen would just continue to worry until he returned to Arendelle. Thankfully, Anna had her own blonde man who could easily make it up the mountains. You want me to go to the Ice Palace, and bring Naruto back as a present for Elsa? Kristoff asked, making sure he had heard everything correctly. Exactly. Anna cheered, having pulled Kristoff away formed the party to discuss her new plan with him. You'll leave after we ring the July bell, and be back with him in time for all the nighttime activities. And by that time, a lot of people will have already gone home, so there'll be less of a chance for him to accidentally hurt anyone. It'll be perfect and Elsa will love it. Resisting the urge to ask for clarification on her choice of wording, Kristoff agreed with his girlfriend's plan, and let her wander off. None the wiser that she had just, plainly, asked him to bring the Queen a man, as a present, for nighttime activities. The mountain man loved the redhead, with all his heart, but sometimes it was obvious that she had been a little sheltered as a child. With a shrug of his shoulders, Kristoff went to make some early preparations for the Christmas tradition he celebrated with the trolls, and wished to spread to his girlfriend and her family. Since he was now going up a mountain instead of making the traditional phlegmy stew, he needed to go get ready for the surprise trip he now needed to make. While it wasn't a complete disaster, the surprise feast had not gone as Anna had planned. The July bell ceremony went perfectly, with the whole town showing up to ring in the holiday season with a joyous sound. Unfortunately, immediately after she and Elsa had rung the July bell, when their surprise feast was to be unveiled, everyone went home. Their own holiday traditions waiting for them in the warmth of their own homes, with their own families. Elsa had been crushed that their gift had been unneeded, and Anna could only think of one way to cheer her sister up. A few words later and Kristoff was on his way up the North Mountain to bring his fellow blonde home for the holidays. Assuming that Naruto would be able to understand what was going on. So, you are having a winter festival, and you're going to give gifts to each other? Naruto recited, making sure he got everything that Kristoff had told him. That about covers it, the ice harvester said. And for some reason, Elsa is sad? Naruto asked, getting a nod in return. Let me make a gift, and we can go. It took him only a few minutes, but Naruto exited the ice palace carrying a small package covered in paper. Kristoff didn't worry too much about it, knowing that his fellow blonde didn't have a lot of resources at the mountain top to make much of anything. Honestly, all there was to work with was ice. The trip down the mountain went quickly, yet still took enough time for the sky to turn dark, leaving a beautifully lit Arendelle off in the distance. Or it would have been lovely if more than half the lights within the town were on. Leaving the houses with a dark atmosphere, a heavy contrast for such a happy time of the year. It was only through Naruto's observant eyes and keen hearing that they noticed flickering lights and the sound of caroling through the forest. Making their way forward, the two men were surprised to find a celebration taking place in a clearing in the woods, with what looked like the whole town of Arendelle in attendance. Several tables made of ice had been created in the ankle-deep snow, topped to the point of spilling over with food and snacks for everyone to enjoy. Some of the townsfolk had taken to skating around on a nearby frozen pond, while those on land chatted with each other, ate delicious food, and held candles to help illuminate the large area. And off to the side, standing near the center of the clearing, was Elsa. Surrounded by the people she worked tirelessly to take care of. All of them wishing her well, or thanking her for all that she has done over the past few months. With hopes of good things to come in the next year, suddenly, a silence began to pass through the crowds, starting near the edges before reaching the center. Causing Anna and Elsa to bring their heads up, and locked eyes with the two blonde men who had just stumbled into the clear. For several seconds, it was silent. The sudden appearance of the two men being a welcome, yet unexpected surprise. But once the silence had settled, the first ones to move were a set of girls. Ingrid, for as young as she was, began charging through the snow towards the blonde-haired man. The other girl was Anna, who leaned over to her sister and whispered a quick, "Merry Christmas, Elsa, hope you like your present," before pushing the queen forwards. By this point the rest of the villagers had come out of their shock and began talking to each other. Meanwhile Ingrid had reached the shinobi, stopping just in front of him, keeping just far enough away that she wouldn't be burned by his heat. Although her smile was just as radiant as it always was. Naruto also wore a smile, but it was more subdued, determined. While he knew what he was about to do was safe, he still worried for the little girl he had come to care for so greatly. With slow movements, he pulled the protective gloves from his hands, and held his fist out for her to see. Normally the heat from his body would be enough to keep the snowfall from ever reaching his skin. Yet now, each icy flake had to fly next to him before melting. A sign that all his hard work to lower his fever had been successful. Ingrid herself couldn't have possibly been brighter, curling her own fingers into a fist and bumped it against Naruto's own. While warm, there was no danger of her being burned from the blonde skin. It was only a few seconds before the little girl threw her arms around the ninja's waist. Happy that her friend was feeling better. By the time Elsa reached the two, she couldn't keep the smile from her face. The little girl and the Uzumaki continuing to embrace was a heartwarming sight, although the hug did remind the queen of something else she had promised earlier. Giving a sweet smile that couldn't hide her smirk, Elsa leaned down to Naruto and whispered softly in his ear. Ingrid had let go of the man by this point, and joined the rest of the villagers in wondering what was being spoken. Between the two blondes, it was a short-held secret, known only by them for a passing second, before Naruto's broad smile turned mischievous. Reaching forward with singular purpose, the ninja grabbed hold of little Ingrid by her sides, and lifted her into the air. Screaming for only a moment as she found herself weightless, while being turned around midair. The young child soon found herself sitting on her idol's shoulders, while his firm hands held her safely to him. Elsa helped as well, placing a steadying hand on the girl's back, which mostly served to increase Ingrid's glee, leading to her shouts of joy lighting up the cold winter night. The whole town was talking now, with hushed whispers passing through the gathered crowds. Most of them were discussing Ingrid and how happy she looked, riding on Naruto's shoulders, while a few others were more focused on Elsa, and how telling her actions might be. "The queen would look so lovely wearing white," an older woman spoke softly to her group of friends. "Oh Helema, you old romantic," someone chided her, remembering how in love the woman had been in her youth, before her beloved had disappeared. A few steps away, Kristoff had joined with Anna, holding her close with one arm, as the couple watched on. "Thanks for bringing Naruto to Elsa," the red-headed princess said, kissing her blonde on the cheek. "It was super easy to see how worried she's been about him." With the last guests having finally arrived, the party continued, long into the night. Naruto would walk around, greeting everyone. Ingrid still riding on his shoulders, and Elsa by his side. Eventually the ninja ran into Olaf, and it had to be explained that the reason for the outdoor part was caused by the snowman. Apparently after the July ceremony, the carrot-nosed individual went out to collect as many traditions from the villagers as possible. Then, through a series of strange events, Olaf became lost and everything he had collected had been destroyed. "It was crazy," the snowman said. "First the tree that you're supposed to hang stuff on caught fire, and that spread to the brooms. Which let me tell you, I was given those brooms to hide from the witches, and I think I accomplished that goal. They're ash now, and no one is going to find them." Naruto listened, trying his best to keep up with the energetic snowman. Ingrid and Elsa smiled, familiar with the story already, but enjoying the more detailed telling. "The tradition I think I'm most upset about losing was the sauna," Olaf continued, pointing at Naruto. "I think you and Elsa would have really liked it. First you get naked, put on only a towel, and then you sit in a really hot room together until you feel good." Naruto was now confused, sauna being a word he hadn't learned yet, and the description wasn't helping with his understanding. At best he guessed that it was something like a hot springs, but without the water. And no separate rooms for girls and boys. Elsa wasn't sure she needed to go to a sauna, given how hot she was feeling at Olaf's description. So she decided to redirect the snowman before any more could be said about the topic. Olaf, I don't think Naruto needs to be any hotter than he already is. Oh yeah, the snowman replied. You're right, since he's hot enough to burn footprints into the steps of the ice palace, he probably shouldn't be going to any warm places. A loud groan resounded from a nearby Kristoff. I knew I was forgetting to tell you something. The ice harvester held his head, muttering about driving his sleigh all day. Oh, what's the big deal? Anna called out. We all knew that Naruto would probably melt some of the ice, and it's not like it's a problem or anything. Unless the steps are over something dangerous, like the gorge that leads to the palace. Elsa pointed out, while staring sternly at Kristoff. Whose nod confirmed that was, indeed, where the damage was. It would definitely be bad if someone fell down there, Anna admitted sheepishly. Which is why I need to go and fix it as soon as possible, Elsa said, forgetting about the part and late hour. A sudden movement broke everyone formed the conversation, as Naruto had started waving his arm to get their attention. If you are talking about where I walked on the ice without shoes, Marshmallow showed me, and I have been jumping over the stairs ever since, the ninja explained as best he could. What I think Naruto's trying to say is that the steps are safe for the moment. Kristoff offered in agreement with his friend. Last time I was up there the footprints were noticeable but shallow. So I don't think there's a reason to go charging up the mountain right now, at night. Elsa released a sigh, knowing it was true. Very well, but I will have to go with Naruto when he returns to the Ice Palace. So I can fix and reinforce the steps. How about you go up after the new year? Anna recommended. That way Naruto can stay in the castle with us for a little bit. Yeah! An excited Ingrid interrupted the princess, before letting out a loud yawn, and laying her own head atop Naruto's. Elsa relented, and agreed with Ingrid that it was getting late. As one the group made their way over to Kristoff's sleigh. Several other families following similar strategies, ushering their own sleepy children home. As they continued to walk, Elsa noticed a pair of discarded gloves in the snow. Given how thick they looked, she had to believe they belonged to Naruto. A smile peeked onto her face as she watched the blonde, his bare hands gently keeping Ingrid in place as he moved. Making sure not to grip her too tightly, for fear of burning the little girl, yet still ensuring that she would never fall. When they reached Kristoff's sleigh, Naruto first lowered a now sleeping Ingrid onto a seat, and covered her with a spare blanket to keep her warm. Once he had finished tucking in the little girl, the Uzumaki reached over and picked up a medium-sized package, crudely wrapped in paper, and tied with a piece of string. The blonde presented the parcel to Elsa. Kristoff told me this was a winter festival, and that people normally give gifts to each other, Naruto explained. As the queen accepted the gift, she wasn't sure how she felt about the gesture. While she had received plenty of gifts for her birthday, just days ago in fact, she had not expected to be given anything from her whisker-cheeked friend. Especially since he had been living on top of a mountain. Taking the package, she felt the leftover heat from where Naruto had been holding it. A reminder that he still wasn't wearing his gloves, and that, along with the surprise present, brought a wide smile to the Ice Queen. Happy that her fellow blonde was healing, and would soon be able to take off his gloves for good. Much like she had done earlier in the year. Tearing into the paper with all the refinement an anxious royal could have, Elsa had soon freed her gift, and came face to face with herself. An ice sculpture in her own image. The statuette was roughly shaped, but still unmistakably a recreation of her. It's beautiful, she said, tenderly holding the icy gift. I was thinking about ways to use up more magic, and I decided to start cutting blocks of ice, Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head in nervousness. I am just glad that I could get it to look like you. You cut ice? Elsa asked, adjusting the statuette in her arms. For my magic I have a natural wind ability. Elsa was glad that she would have until the new year to spend with her friend, so she could try to figure out what he meant by that. Chapter 15. The Burning Question. The entrance hall to Arendelle Castle was in mid-turmoil, as the decorations for the holidays were changed to ones more befitting the New Year's celebration. An act with little meaning, given that no foreign dignitaries dared travel to the region during the frozen winters, but it did lift the spirits of the townspeople so no one complained. Least of all Anna, who was attempting to slide down a garland-covered banister. She was able to make it a fourth of the way down the railing before the garlands hanging on the side forced her to stop and jump onto the stairs. A new record for her. "Now it's my turn, Anna," Olaf called as he climbed onto the railing, and was soon hurtled downwards. His body easily passing through all of the ornaments, leaving a light dusting of snow behind him. Reaching the bottom, he launched himself with a stylish twirl, and landed in just as dramatic a fashion. "Very good, Olaf," Anna said as she moved down the stairs to join him. "We should totally go sledding this afternoon," the snowman cheered. "That way Sven could come with us. If we do, we'll have to make sure that Elsa and Naruto come as well," the princess amended. "That's easy. All we have to do is get Naruto to come with us, and then Elsa will follow him. She and Naruto are almost never apart. Well, when Naruto first arrived in Arendelle, Elsa spent the most time with him. So she probably missed him the most when he left for the Ice Palace," Anna sheepishly admitted, having noticed the amount of time her sister spent with the whiskered blonde. "Yeah," the snowman exclaimed. "I'm just glad that Elsa found someone to keep her company, while you and I aren't around. All of us have our own duties, so we can't be around each other all the time," the redhead said, thinking about all the times that she had been pulled away from her sister, or the other way around. "Hey, do I have any duties to perform?" Olaf innocently asked. "I don't know, but we could probably find some for you," Anna said as she began running towards the kitchen, as the snowman let out a yell of joy before chasing after her. Meanwhile, in another part of the castle, Elsa was filling out paperwork at her desk, a nearby window giving her a glimpse at the frozen world outside. Specifically the whiskered man who currently had several kids clinging to him while he ran laps around the courtyard. She knew that for the next 2 days all the children would try to spend as much of their time with the blonde as they could, before he had to return to his isolation in the Ice Palace, where, hopefully, he would continue to drop his fever, and then return to the village permanently. While the queen felt lonely as she sat at her desk, she couldn't find it in herself to pull Naruto away from the children, leaving them to have their fun. And although the warm blonde had quickly become one of her closest friends, she always felt a sense of loss when he had to leave. It was the same feeling from all those years ago, when she and her sister had been separated. But those were thoughts for another time. Naruto would have chastised her for being so down, telling her to, instead, be glad for the here and now. It was probably selfish of her, wanting to keep the whiskered youth to herself, even though he had already touched the lives of so many people in the village, especially the children. But it was rapidly approaching nighttime, and everybody would be heading back to the warmth of their houses. At which point Naruto would still be outside, working his body as hard as he could. Also he would spend less time at the Ice Palace, and come back to the castle sooner. The queen straightened in her chair, returning her attention to her desk. While the winter months had given her less paperwork, there was still plenty to do. And with just the thought of Naruto distracting her, maybe it was better that she was alone in her office. Who knew how distracting it would be if she was alone with Naruto? It was shortly after dinner when Elsa and Naruto entered the parlor. In an hour or so Anna and Kristoff would be joining them for a night of games, but the couple were off doing their own thing for the moment, thus leaving the two blondes alone. With the ninja having been absent for so long, the queen thought it would be a good idea to go over the Japanese dictionary again, much like they used to do when Naruto first came to Arendelle, and to make sure that his language skills hadn't deteriorated during his stay at the palace. Time quickly passed as the two kept each other company. Elsa would read out a word, and Naruto would, to the best of his abilities, answer, until they reached a certain section. For all the previous times the two had read through the book, the queen had made certain to leave out several words. This hadn't been done with malicious intent, but due to their embarrassing nature, along with her uncertainty that her friend would ever need to know them. Yet for every day that passed, it looked more likely that the mysterious blonde would continue to stay in the village, near all of his new friends and her. With a deep breath the queen contemplated her options. On the page before her was the word lovers, and while she didn't mind the word at all, Elsa struggled to read it out loud, feeling sure that Naruto would have never heard the word, and she would have to explain to him what was involved. However, she had found the perfect replacement word. And it was all thanks to her sister. Boyfriend? A word that the golden blonde was sure to need while out in the village, but without the implications that came with lovers. Naruto took a couple of seconds to think of a response. Not that Elsa minded, taking her own time to enjoy how cute his whiskered cheeks looked when he puffed them out and thought. A friend, who is a man? The ninja sounded out from his knowledge. Yes, but it has a specific meaning that I want you to know, the platinum blonde answered. It usually goes with the word girlfriend if that helps you. So, it refers to a man and a woman who are together? Naruto replied back, a hint of questioning to his voice. Dating, the queen said, putting emphasis on the end of the word. If two people want to see how well they get along before they get married, they will go on a date. The ninja repeated the words under his breath, making sure that he understood everything that was being said. And married is when two people move in with each other and have children. Elsa's whole face turned an impressive shade of pink as she nodded her head in confirmation. She was glad that her, sometimes, naive friend seemed to know what being married could entail, without her having to explain anything, but this was still a topic she had been hoping to avoid. Luckily, she had an example to use as a distraction. Yes, children are part of getting married, but we've gotten sidetracked. Elsa made a show of shifting in her seat in the hope that Naruto would leave the topic of children behind them. Now, Kristoff and Anna are not yet married, so that means they are dating. The blonde answered with his usual enthusiasm, causing the woman to clap in joy. Glad that her distraction had worked. At least until Naruto's bluntness came back in full force with an innocent question. Are you dating anyone, Elsa? It took the queen almost a minute to compose herself, before she gave out a quick no. Although she was unsure why she was so reluctant to answer his question. While she was tired of fending off suitors, she didn't feel that she should be embarrassed about her lack of a relationship. Yet she felt her heart soar and clench at the same time, when her friend began to open his mouth to ask another question. Whatever it might have been would have to go unanswered for the moment, as the door to the room was hurriedly opened, allowing the aforementioned couple of Anna and Kristoff to enter, with the princess carrying a stack of boxes in her arms. It's game night, the redhead hollered out in joy, as she moved towards the table, her boyfriend following close behind. The two other blondes looked at each other, knowing their practice time alone was at an end. With a smile, Elsa closed the dictionary, as Naruto stood up from his seat on the fireplace brickwork. Throughout the rest of the night, the queen insisted on sitting beside her friend, making sure that he understood everything that was going on in the game. The early noon sun was high in the air as Elsa and Naruto made their way higher into the mountains, with the queen's horse easily following behind the overheated ninja through the snow, moving at a quick pace to the ice palace where she would repair the icy steps. The journey went by quickly as Elsa nimbly guided her mount forward, her body feeling warm and loose from the shoulder massage Naruto had given her the previous night, a service she would surely miss while her friend was away. Of course she would miss her friend more, but the quiet moments the two shared together always brought a smile to her lips. Sometimes it felt like she was keeping a thrilling secret from the rest of the kingdom, as she confided in her fellow blonde, which scared her as much as she enjoyed it. A stranger becoming so close to a queen in only 6 months would be frightening most of the time. But Naruto was able to do it seamlessly, thanks to his kindness towards everyone, herself included. It was this thought that she became lost in, mindlessly letting her horse follow behind the man who stole her thoughts. When she was young, Elsa was treated as a princess, and now that she was queen, that is how she was treated. With respect and admiration. Yet Naruto didn't. The displaced man was just as ready to help someone carry a heavy load, as he was giving the queen a shoulder massage. He never treated anyone different from anyone else, instead choosing to put equal importance on spending time with her as he did with the orphaned children. Elsa found it refreshing. The only other people who regularly treated her the same as everyone else were her sister and Olaf. And while she always enjoyed spending time with those two, there was just something about Naruto that drew her to him. An unfamiliar freshness that pulled her towards the unknown, which led to her spending as much of her time as she could, and more, with the blonde. His optimistic outlook and sunny personality always brought her a smile. Just being around him seemed to brighten her day, and not because of his higher body temperature. In all honesty, her desire to spend more time with Naruto often left her confused. The sudden sting of a frozen wind broke the queen from her thoughts, startling not only her, but her horse, at the sudden dip in temperature. Thankfully, she was accompanied by someone whose body heat was very useful for staying warm. And with his unique fashion sense that was easy to follow in the brewing blizzard, it only took a few minutes before they arrived at the palace. Acting quickly, Elsa raised an icy stable to house her horse. Yet before she could congratulate herself on a job well done, she was scooped up into Naruto's arms. Instead of being carried over the slightly damaged stairs, the shinobi simply jumped to the other side, gracefully landing into a sprint, as he barged into the protective cover of the building. Once they had both caught their breath, having run from the unexpected snowstorm, the two turned to each other, only to find a lack of space between them, as Naruto still held the queen in his arms, having held her close to his warm body as he carried her over the threshold. Red-faced, the two separated, with the golden blonde gently placing the platinum blonde back on her feet, and despite Elsa's desire to move farther away from her friend, at least until her blush cooled down, she found herself sticking by his warm side. While the unnatural heat from Naruto had kept any snow from sticking to him, Elsa was not as fortunate. Even though she was the queen of ice and snow, she wasn't able to completely protect herself from a blizzard, leaving small patches of snow sticking to her cloak and hair. After a silent minute, the two of them regained their composure. "With that blizzard outside, I don't think we'll be fixing the steps for a while," Elsa said as she moved farther into the ice palace, which Naruto readily agreed with. He was probably the only person who could go out in that storm safely, and that had just as much to do with his ninja training as his higher body temperature. With an elegant shake, the queen was able to dislodge all the snow that had been clinging to her, after which she began to undo the clasp on her cloak, intent on hanging it up to dry for the ride back down the mountain. Unfortunately, she found that, once inside, more snow had found its way onto her. Mainly the snowgies, many of whom were now riding around on the train of her cape. The rest of the small snowmen came up patiently for their turn, each one with a gleeful smile. Elsa found herself unable to leave the little ones disappointed, so she spent the remainder of the night enjoying the rare opportunity to play with them. From carrying them around on her dress, to creating mounds of ice for them to slide down, the queen made sure that everyone was given attention, and as soon as she was done with one group, they would skip over to awaiting Naruto and Marshmallow, both of whom had taken to juggling the small creatures, which was met with much joy, especially when the two would begin passing them between each other. This lasted until the night, when Elsa and Naruto eventually broke off for a simple dinner made from the food that Kristoff had previously brought up. Shortly thereafter, the queen tried to stifle a yawn before being ushered off to bed by her friend, falling asleep minutes after laying her head down on the pillow of snow. Elsa would swear she had never felt so comfortable, her entire body surrounded by a delicate softness, and although she would have enjoyed a bit more warmth around her, she felt safe as she rested. Then she was awoken. Something had just called to her. Perhaps she had imagined it, for just as quickly as she heard it, it was gone, as though it was just a song whistled by the wind. Whatever it had been was real enough to bring her to full consciousness, ending the peaceful sleep she had been enjoying, and with little hope of going back to sleep, she sat up. While the room was dimly lit, she was still able to make out the familiar emptiness of the suite, the only furniture being the elegant bed she had made for herself on that first night she had run away, leaving behind everything that she had known and loved, in exchange for release. What she had first thought was freedom had been beautiful and liberating. Yet, much like the room she had made for herself, was empty and lonely with no one to share it with. Something Anna had shown her. Elsa shook her head to dispel the thoughts, having long ago accepted that being with her sister, and the village as a whole, was for the best. Not only for her health and sanity, but for her happiness as well. Yet, in this empty room, the queen found herself blaming the silence for reintroducing the memories of when she was alone. In fact, she had become so lost in her own thoughts, that she was surprised by just how quiet it was. The previous howl of the blizzard had vanished during her short rest, leaving behind a fragile peace that was only broken when she stood up. After adjusting her dress that she had worn to bed, the queen began walking towards the stairs, wishing that she could rush back to the castle for her usual nightgown, before returning to the chilled comfort of the bed she was leaving. Of course, she couldn't stay in the ice palace any longer than she had to. As long as her people needed her, she would always return to her throne as quickly as possible. Once the stairs were fixed in the morning, she would bid Naruto farewell, and return to the village. Having left her frozen bedroom, and with no other goal in mind, Elsa set out looking for her fellow blonde, thinking that the energetic youth was probably still awake somewhere in the palace. Thankfully, she found him as soon as she reached the grand staircase in the entrance hall. Finding the front door left open, with her target sitting outside in the clear winter night. A minute later, and she was sitting next to him, secretly enjoying the warmth her friend radiated, which made watching the beautiful sky more comfortable. "It's gorgeous, isn't it?" the queen stated more than asked. "I like it," Naruto answered simply. "Sometimes it's nice to just lean back and look at the stars." Elsa continued, finding familiar comfort in talking with her friend. "Just forget everything else for a little bit, and act like a normal girl. It is nice to be treated the same as everyone else," the warm blonde confirmed, before asking, "Do you like being treated like a normal girl, Elsa?" "Yes, very much," she replied with a bit more force than she had meant to. Composing herself, she continued, "Most people see me as the queen, so it's always nice when I can relax a little." Naruto nodded, understanding her situation. So, with little hesitation, he reached out and held her hand. "Elsa, will you be my girlfriend?" Elsa was speechless. While she had been shocked and confused when he had grabbed her hand, all of that was forgotten once he had voiced his question. She didn't know how to respond, or what to think of the proposal. Her body and mind were now frozen, not knowing what to do. "When we talked about dating earlier, you looked sad about not having a boyfriend. So I want to take you on a date to make you feel better," the blonde man said, with all the simplicity that made up his being. Elsa, while still shocked, suddenly felt like laughing. Only Naruto would be able to create a moment in her life that she would never forget, with the sole intent of making her happy. "Naruto, it's more complicated than that," the queen pushed herself to answer, not wanting her friend to get the wrong idea if she took too long. Although in her heart she couldn't think of anything to say. For almost a half-year she had been fending off suitors, her position as queen making her very appealing to certain groups. Naruto gave her hand a light squeeze, wanting to convey his intent to her with his actions, just as much as with the words she had taught him. "When I first arrived here, you took care of me even when you were busy. You even made sure to teach me the language, so I could make friends in this new place." His speech was slow, but Elsa was captivated by his every word. Unable to do more than listen. "You became my first friend here." The blonde took a breath before he continued. "And as your friend I want to learn more about you, and make you happy." Elsa put her entire focus into processing the confession she had just heard. Naruto specifically letting her have all the power in this decision, while still making his own hopes known, as everything about the man in front of her was resolute. Except for his hands. The queen could feel her own soft hand being cupped by the rough palm of her friend, holding her close, yet giving her enough room to pull back if she wanted. Letting her feel all of the hard work he had put into making his hands so calloused, and knowing he would put just as much work into making her happy. "Yes," she breathes out. "I want to be your girlfriend." A shock of thrill wound through her body, at the smile on her friend's face. A smile that she had given to her boyfriend. And the grip of his hand tightened, telling her he would hold on to her forever. "But," Elsa interrupted before he could respond, a playful smile on her lips. "You can't take me on a date until your temperature is back to normal. Then I will be healed before spring," Naruto declared with his usual finality. Elsa chuckled, and shifted herself so she was sitting against the man she hoped to be seeing more of. "I know you will," she said. "Just remember that it's bad manners to keep a girl waiting." He nodded and flashed her that large grin of his that she found so endearing. And so, long into the night, the daughter of a king and the son of a Kage sat beside each other, their hands clasped together, silently watching the night sky, neither able to deafen their smiles from showing just how happy they were. Chapter 16. Cool enough to go back. The symbol of Arendelle was the crocus, a flower that was planted throughout the entire kingdom, being just as easily found within the castle gardens as it was out in the wild fields. But the most prominent place of honor for the crocus was on the emblem that was hung at every corner, proudly stitched onto the Arendelle flag, as a symbol of rising up even before spring had come, which is exactly what the village was preparing for. But just as the first crocus was blooming into life, outside of Arendelle in the widespread mountains, someone else was worrying about the end of winter, and the promise he fully intended to keep. Naruto Uzumaki stood at the bottom of the repaired stairs, his body fully clothed and protected from the biting wind, except for his hands, which he kept bare for his final test. Plunging his arm into a nearby snowply, he pulled out the biggest handful of snow he could, and began molding it. Once his snowball was finished, he held it in his hand for a minute, before throwing it against a tree. When the projectile broke apart against the hard bark, having kept its shape until then, Naruto smiled. If prolonged contact didn't immediately melt the snow, Then it seemed that his overheating problem had finally been solved. While you're not completely healed, you should only have to worry about having a higher temperature than normal, Kurama called out from the blonde's mind. I never would have healed this quickly if it weren't for you, partner, the ninja replied, glad that he wasn't melting things instantly with his touch. I guess you'll be heading back to that village to keep that promise you wouldn't shut up about. The ancient fox chose not to make a big deal out of the blonde's words. Just a few things left to do, and we'll be on our way, Naruto happily called. Next to the ice stable, that Elsa had hastily erected, was a flat sleigh loaded high with chopped wood. A few leftover cords of wood were neatly placed and stacked inside the stable. This had come about thanks to Kristoff, who had brought Naruto his weekly supply of food, a few days after Elsa had returned to the village. After which the two blondes spent some time discussing the surprising, but not unwelcome, news about the new couple. Flashback. Kristoff gave an appraising look towards his friend. You actually asked Elsa out on a date? Yes, the ninja answered, as the two carried several boxes into the palace. Just checking, the ice harvester stressed. While I trust Elsa, I just wanted to make sure that both of you were certain about this. I asked her, and she agreed. It was that simple, Naruto summarized. Trust me on this, dating royalty is never that simple. While Anna and I have been going out for over 6 months, I've had to change a lot of my habits. For instance, I can't scratch myself whenever I want now, and I'm only dating a princess, Kristoff exclaimed. Who wants me to ask you everything, because this date between you and her sister is all she's been thinking about since she found out. Anna is very energetic, Naruto admitted, scratching at the back of his head after putting down his boxes. She is probably just making sure that Elsa will not regret going on a date with me. I've seen how you and Elsa act around each other, and I'm pretty sure she'll enjoy whatever you have planned. But I think there might be a problem with that. At the confused look on Kristoff's face, the ninja tried to explain further. I do not know about any of the normal things to do on a date here. I do not even know if they are different from where I am from. That could be a problem. The native man spoke in a somber tone. If you accidentally did something weird, even if Elsa doesn't mind, the rest of the town might. Which is why I want you to teach me about dating here in Arendelle, Naruto said with conviction, having decided that it would be best for him to seek advice from another man. Also, Kristoff was the only person he could talk to on top of the mountain. And I need to figure out a way to earn some money. Well, we've got plenty of time to talk about dating, but there's not much you can do in the winter to make money. All I can really think of is chopping wood for fires. I can chop wood easily, the ninja joyfully said, instantly liking the idea. There are already plenty of trees nearby that have fallen down. It would not be too much trouble to cut them up. And I can take everything you chop up down to the village to sell, Kristoff called out, equally happy with the idea. Present a deal was soon struck between the two blondes. And it was thanks to this partnership that a nice jingle of coins could be from Naruto's pouch. Most of which would be spent on making sure that Elsa was happy, but he did plan to keep some for later. Possibly their next date. With another look at the ice palace, and a wave towards Marshmallow and the Snowgeese, Naruto headed towards the wood-laden sleigh. The harness currently attached to it was meant for a reindeer, but Sven and Kristoff had already left for the week. And since he had decided only a couple of days ago to return to the village, he would have to pull the sleigh down the mountain himself. It would be a simple workout for him. Of course, since the ice harvester and his reindeer had left unaware that Naruto's fever had finally receded. The rest of the village would be in for a surprise when the blonde showed up in a few hours. Is there any reason you're choosing now to return? Kurama asked. It seems to me you would have a more graceful entrance if you waited a few more days for that other man to show up. I already stayed a few extra days to make sure that I was fully healed, and now that I know my fever isn't going to come back, I'm too excited to just wait. Naruto responded to his partner with a silly grin on his face. I guess you're just going to keep your title of being unpredictable. The giant fox's words were met with a grunt as Naruto, with the sled being pulled behind him, took his first step towards getting down the mountain. With the tall pile of wood bumping into the lower branches of the trees, causing the sleigh and its contents to be covered in snow. Break, do you think he'll come back today? The red-headed princess of Arendelle asked, as she twirled about the room. Anna, you've asked that question almost every day for a month, Elsa replied from her chair. When Naruto is ready, Kristoff will bring him down. But Kristoff isn't going back to the ice palace to check on him for several more days. Anna sighed out, having already heard her sister give this explanation. Feeling annoyed that the return of her sister's intended relied on her own boyfriend. I don't know why you're so excited for my date, the Queen said, making sure to emphasize that this would be an event for her. Of course I'm excited, my sister is going on a date, the freckled princess stated. And it's my job, as your sister, to be happy for you. Except that you seem even more thrilled than I am. And trust me, I'm ecstatic about this. Elsa spoke calmly at first, but her voice became louder as her trepidation began to return. See, Anna called out at her sister's agitation. This is why I'm glad you've got a date. After all those years where you were locked in your room, someone has finally asked you out, and you're stressed about it. I am not. Yes, you are. I know all the little signs you show when you are, the princess stated before she began to count with her fingers. You've been doing nothing but work since you got back from the ice palace, you're constantly pacing, and you're even wearing mother's scarf, which you only pull out when you're worrying about something. Elsa shrunk into her chair, as she was unable to deny any of her sister's claims. She had been using paperwork to keep her mind busy, and with a timid glance over her shoulder she could see her mother's maroon scarf hung, lovingly, on the back of her chair. You're right, Anna, I'm nervous, she admitted with a sigh. And I know what you're going to say next, but I'm going to stop you, the redhead proclaimed. You're worried about how your date will go. But Naruto is a lot like Kristoff, and both of them would do anything they can to make sure that any date they plan goes perfectly. So you don't need to worry about anything other than what dress you want to wear. Elsa took a few moments to let her sister's words sink in, trying to calmly think about what she had, inadvertently, agreed to. While she would never regret accepting Naruto's offer of a date, the possible side effects had been far from her mind as she gazed into his sapphire eyes. One of her main concerns was the people of the town. While the Queen going on a date with a local hero would not be seen as odd by most of the people, there would be a few who disliked the idea of their ruler being courted by a foreigner. One of the many reasons she had declined all suitors up till now. There was also the perception of her boyfriend. It was rather easy to write the man off as being simple-minded. While it wasn't his fault that he could barely read or write their language, it did not win him any favors with the more traditional citizens. Thankfully, that could be corrected in time, much as the language barrier had been, but it would take a while. The final point against him was just how mysterious the blonde was. Since he had only shown up about half a year ago, there was still so little that anyone knew about him. When he talked about his home, it was sometimes difficult to believe some of the more fantastical-sounding elements. With a contented sigh, the Queen sat back up in her chair. While it would be hard work to maintain any kind of relationship, Elsa's social schedule was constantly full. From rekindling what she had with Anna to being queen, but something about Naruto made her want to try for something more. Whether it was the feeling of safety she had whenever he was around, or that sunny smile he had, all it took was remembering how happy he looked when she said yes to his question, to help ease her mind. You're right, Anna, everything will be fine, Elsa finally said, secure in her decision. Of course I am, the perky redhead stated with confidence. You and Naruto already get along so well, there's no reason you should worry about small things. The Queen stifled a giggle at her sister's antics, before her lips turned into a sly smile. When did you become an authority on dating? Well, my boyfriend's family is full of love experts, so I was bound to learn a couple of things from them, Anna quickly replied, now sharing Elsa's smile. It was only a second later that the two sisters broke into laughter, both enjoying the moment shared between them. The simple act of discussing their respective boyfriends would soon become a common topic. It was the sound of running feet that alerted Elsa and Anna to the arrival of a new group. A pair of guards rushed into the room, both apologizing for the sudden interruption, but they apparently had urgent news. There's a giant mound of snow moving towards the village, Your Highness, the first guard spoke. At first I thought he was just seeing things, the second guard followed. But I saw it too. There's a large pile of snow moving through the trees towards the town gates. Anna leaned closer to her sister. It sounds like Marshmallow. Except there's no reason for him to leave the ice palace, the Queen countered. Unless something happened. Like an accident, the princess spoke, her tone turning grim. Elsa didn't need to be told what might have happened at the ice palace, or more precisely who it would have involved. Her heart suddenly felt cold, as she stared ahead blankly. A patch of ice spread from where her fingers gripped the table. Queen Elsa! The yell tore everyone's attention away from the thought of what might have happened. As an out-of-breath Gerda ran through the open doors. "Naruto is at the front gate," the maid gasped out. Whatever else was going to be said was lost, as Elsa bolted from her chair. Her feet feeling as light as her heart now was. Gladdened at the knowledge that her friend was okay. That her boyfriend was safe. Faster than she had ever made the trip, the queen was standing in the entryway of the castle. Arriving just in time to watch the man she had been worrying about walk through the door. A dusting of snow clinging to his head and shoulders. Meaning he had kept his promise, and only returned after he was healed. While Elsa was unsure if she was ready to say that she loved the blonde man before her, the past few minutes helped her learn a bit more about how deeply she felt. From how scared she was at the thought of anything bad happening to him, to the joy she felt at learning he had kept his promise. She could feel herself getting closer to saying that she truly loved him. "Elsa!" Naruto happily called out with a wave. But before he rushed over to her, he stared at her face. "Have you been sad?" There he goes again, she thought, worrying about her, and making her heart melt. Not anymore. Chapter 17, The Date. "So it wasn't a monster," said the guard, who had initially raised the alarm. He and his partner were standing in the courtyard of the castle, watching as Naruto effortlessly unloaded the chopped wood from his sled, happily dusting the snow from the top of the pile, which the guards had seen moving, and mistook it for some kind of creature. "Even if it had been a monster, Elsa would have dealt with it," Anna answered the guards. "Why don't you two head back into town, and tell people that Naruto's back?" the princess continued, believing that there would be others in the town who mistook the snow-covered sleigh. With a bow, the two guards took off, leaving the princess, who turned her focus back to her sister. Elsa was busy directing the castle staff to help unload the chopped wood from the sled. While she didn't know why her boyfriend had brought the wood, she was going to make sure that it was stored properly. She did plan on finding out later what it was for. But all of that could wait. For the moment, she just wanted to go back inside with her boyfriend. Possibly have a late lunch, before sitting and talking with each other. Much like they had been before he left. When everything was put away, Elsa stood beside the fountain, trying to patiently wait for her fellow blonde to arrive. Smiling to herself that Naruto's infectious energy seemed to be rubbing off on her. When the no longer overheating man was finally standing beside her, the two shared a smile before turning towards the castle. At which point Elsa made her move. Sliding next to her boyfriend, and with a red face. The queen quietly took his hand in hers and began walking towards the entrance. It was an odd feeling for her. Acting like a girlfriend, and holding hands because she liked being close to him, as opposed to guiding him around. After years of isolating herself in a room, it was a struggle to reach out and touch him. Always afraid of hurting someone with her eyes, like she had with Anna. But with Naruto she didn't get that feeling of dread. His warm body preventing her eyes from affecting him. Even now, after his temperature had gone down, she could feel his warmth pass from his hand to hers, and heat up her own body. Perhaps this was how Anna felt when she and Kristoff started dating. Happy just to be around the one you cared for. Just enjoying the simple pleasure of holding each other's hands. Elsa fidgeted around, much to Anna's quiet amusement. As the queen walked around in her undergarments, alternating between her wardrobe and peeking out the window at the clear sky. "Okay, deep breath," the platinum blonde said, suddenly stopping in the middle of the room, trying to rein in her nervousness. "I don't think I've ever seen you this nervous before," Anna said with a laugh. "You kind of remind me of Kristoff during our first date." "I'm not shaking nearly as much as he was," the elder sister retorted, feigning an insulted tone. Although the smile she wore gave her away. The red-headed princess rolled her eyes as she stood up from the bed and moved towards the wardrobe. The doors already wide open to show off the different gowns inside. None of which had been touched, as Elsa struggled to decide on which one to wear. The queen having been adamant on not just conjuring an ice dress for her date, and instead wanted to dress in something that her boyfriend hadn't seen her in yet. "If you're not happy with any of these dresses, maybe you have something else in your closet?" Anna questioned, exasperated by her sister's indecision. Which was strange for the normally well-organized queen. Although Anna's words were meant to calm her down, Elsa instead found herself remembering what was left inside the closet of her new room. While she may have moved into this room a year ago, just before her coronation, it had originally been her parents'. And a lot of what they had left behind after their passing had been stored inside the closet. "I don't think there's anything I could wear in there," the queen said softly. "Then get over here, and pick something you think you could wear. Anna pressed in exasperation. And you need to hurry and choose, because we've got a lot more to do if you want to look as amazing as possible for Naruto. Elsa sighed as she ran her hand through her loose hair, which was yet another thing she needed to decide on before her date. She was starting to worry that dating was going to require even more decision-making than ruling a kingdom. Break in one of the sitting rooms beside the entrance hall. Naruto, Kristoff, and Sven had gathered to finalize the plan for the date. While the ninja was already dressed as well as he could be for the event, and everything he would need for the date was packed safely in a basket, his nervousness was still easy to see. Something which had the ice harvester scratching his head, given his friend's usually brash nature. By now the Uzumaki was on his 9th lap of the room, walking towards the far wall before going up it, across the ceiling, and finally down another wall to begin his 10th lap. I don't think you really have anything left to worry about, Kristoff said as he leaned over to scratch Sven behind his ears. This is my first time taking royalty on a date, the shinobi countered. What, Queens back home didn't ask you out? The Arendelle native jokingly asked. Naruto paused as he thought about several daimyos and a high priestess he knew, but chose not to answer the question, letting the silence hang in the air. Kristoff shrugged, taking his companion's silence as a show of his anxiety. Given how you two normally act around each other, I don't think there's much to worry about. The ice harvester would have said more, but since his companion remained silent, he chose to stay quiet as well. In fact, the only thing the other blonde did was stare off into the distance, and occasionally move his brow, as though he was listening to an exasperating discussion. Whatever the former ninja was doing, Kristoff figured it would be best to let his friend be for the moment, and just enjoy the time before his date. At least he had stopped walking around the room. Break. Okay, Elsa, here we go. The queen spoke to herself, slowly walking towards the entrance hall, where her date was waiting, trying desperately to conceal her nervousness, while still feeling the joy flowing inside her. A few steps later, and she rounded the last corner into the entrance hall, where Naruto was waiting patiently. Once she was in view, he greeted her in his usual enthusiastic way, but didn't say anything beyond that. He simply stood and stared at her, taking in every detail of her appearance. A dark blush forming on his cheeks, that was soon joined by a blush of her own. With the early spring chill still in the air, she had chosen to wear a heavier gown, ensuring some protection from the cold wind. While the cold didn't bother her, there was something nice about being snug and warm, which was a small portion of why she enjoyed spending so much time with the man next to her. His very being made her feel safe and comfortable. Whether it was the heat radiating from his body or that wonderful smile he always had, her boyfriend was a joy to be around. The two spent a few seconds appreciating each other, before leaving the castle, hand in hand, and doing their best to ignore the watchful eyes of the castle residents, who were trying to discreetly watch the couple as they made it past the front gates. Where are we going? Elsa excitedly asked, not knowing what was planned for the day, having given in to Naruto's request to let him plan out their date. Outside of town, the blonde said, holding up a wicker basket. We are having lunch next to the lake. The queen was pleasantly surprised by the response, knowing that lunch would probably be part of their outing, but had expected something indoors due to the cold weather. Although perhaps that was why he had chosen the outdoor venue. There were very few people who would venture outside unnecessarily in the early spring, meaning that she and Naruto would be alone. Something that was becoming a welcome idea as the two strolled down the street, stopping every few steps for Elsa to greet a villager or Naruto to quickly help someone move something heavy onto a cart. Once the ninja had spent a few seconds helping whoever needed it, he would return to the queen's side and grasp her hand again. Something the people took great notice of as the closer the new couple got to the edge of town, the more people would whisper and point at them, no doubt curious about what relationship they now shared. Just before the two were about to leave the town, they passed by an empty lot that had been set aside for the children to play in. Once Naruto was seen passing by, the kids stopped what they were doing and rushed towards the blonde, happily yelling out in excitement at his passing. Of course, near the front of the pack was Ingrid, the young girl throwing herself into the air, where the Uzumaki dexterously caught her with a single arm, although he did have to let go of his girlfriend's hand. Hello everyone, the blonde shouted out as the kids gathered around him. I am sorry, but I cannot play today. I am spending the day with Elsa. The children turned their attention to the queen, many of whom had already given their respectful greeting. Among the children was Ingrid's friend, a young girl with frizzy red hair and freckles named Hedda. Are you two going on a date? The redhead asked with a wide smile. While Naruto began speaking in his native language, Elsa decided it would be best to tell the truth to the children, and everyone else that was listening. Blushing, the queen lowered herself closer to the child's height. Yes, Naruto and I are going on a date. All of the children cheered. Ingrid gave a quick hug around the blonde's neck before jumping down from his arm. Once on the ground, the little girl, and several others, began to push the man towards his girlfriend so they could continue with their date. Once more holding hands, the two blondes were able to make their way out of the town to the well wishes of the villagers. Although the farewell calls to Queen Elsa and King Naruto would take some getting used to for everyone. Things are going to be interesting once we get back to town, Elsa called out. We'll probably have to sneak back to the castle to avoid everybody. I can carry you over the rooftops, Naruto replied cheekily. Maybe, the queen giggled to herself. Both of them happily talked as they moved farther away from the town, eventually reaching the spot Naruto had picked for their picnic. Although Elsa had been to the lake he had chosen, where they would be sitting was not what she had expected. While she had been thinking they would have lunch next to the frozen lake, the displaced ninja instead began walking over it, leading them to a small grassy island in the middle of the ice. Surprised by the turn of events, the queen smiled at her boyfriend to let him know she was happy, before suddenly letting go of his hand. While others would struggle to find solid footing, the sorceress found freedom, joyously skating around her fellow blonde with perfect precision, sailing so close that their clothes brushed together with each pass. Where Naruto could walk across the ice, Elsa danced. It took far longer than intended for the duo to reach the island. Elsa was happily out of breath as she made one last twirl before walking onto the land. Lunch already set out, as her boyfriend sat on a rock clapping at her display. With a half bow, she took a seat next to him to catch her breath. A minute of rest later, and she was presented with a plate of sandwiches. The meal was simple, made to survive the early spring weather, more than anything. And while the food was tasty, the company was even better, as the two spent hours sitting together, neither caring about the cold, only paying attention to each other as they talked. When the sun was well past its zenith, the couple became silent, simply relaxing in the other's presence. Naruto stared off into the distance, while Elsa took some time to watch his face. She had noticed that ever since he had returned from the Ice Palace, her boyfriend had picked up a strange habit. Sometimes, when Naruto was looking off into the distance, she had noticed that he would twitch his eyebrows, or roll his eyes, almost like he was having a conversation that only he could hear. She found herself thinking it was cute, but not as cute as his whiskered cheeks. With a devious smile, the queen reached up to give the faux whiskers a soft rub, startling their owner, but he calmed down quickly when he realized it was Elsa. Begrudgingly, he sat as quietly as he could, letting the girl massage his cheek, until, inevitably, he began to purr. While initially the queen had found little opportunity to talk with her friend about his strange ability, over the months they had known each other the topic had come up. And while the shinobi was usually not fond of the trait, he made an exception for the woman he cherished, taking his own enjoyment from her soft caresses. Once the queen was satisfied, she stopped, letting the low rumble from the man end, before she made her own move. While Naruto had planned out the wonderful date, she doubted he had planned for this. As quick as she could, she leaned over and kissed his cheek. She pulled back with a smile. Today was wonderful, Naruto, thank you. Her words were soft but heartfelt. Having greatly enjoyed her time away from the castle and town, being out in nature with no one else around but her boyfriend had a profoundly calming effect on her. With none of her royal duties to attend to, the queen felt at ease. There was even a nice song on the wind calling out to her. Standing up, she brushed her gown clean and turned to the still stunned man. His face colored crimson as he held his own cheek. It's about time we head back, Elsa said, much to her own displeasure. We can't hide out here forever, and everyone probably wants to know how our date went. Though not moving as swiftly as normal, Naruto did stand up as well. Quickly putting away what was left of lunch, he stood next to her with a smile. I think our date was great, he stated, grasping her hand. Elsa shared his grin, but took a quick look at their joined hands. Neither of them needed to wear gloves, so their bare skin could touch. Life is definitely better with the gloves off, she softly spoke to herself, but Naruto still heard, looking at her in confusion, while he lifted up the wicker basket with his other bare hand. With no flames in sight. Let's go home. Chapter 18. A Day Around Arendelle. I heard that the Queen's date went well yesterday. A woman spoke with her friend. Both of them enjoying the clear spring sky. Last fall, Naruto helped my husband move a tree down to the mill. The other woman responded. It's comforting to know that our queen is dating someone so reliable. Many similar conversations were happening all over the kingdom, each filled with stories about the blonde, and all that he had done for the village. Queen Elsa and King Naruto, walking hand in hand. A group of children sang out as they marched down the street. For the last time, children, the queen's suitor is not allowed to become king. At most he will become Prince Naruto. A music instructor lamented to the kids. Why can't he be king? One of the children asked. I think Naruto would make a great king. He's so kind and strong. Regardless of his qualifications, he is a foreigner, the tutor replied. And therefore, he cannot become king. The highest rank he can obtain will be prince. That's dumb, another child exclaimed. Naruto would be the best king ever. But he does not have the training or knowledge to lead our people. He can learn, just like he learned to talk with us. A young red-headed girl yelled out, quickly supported by her blonde friend, and then all the other gathered children. Queen Elsa and King Naruto, walking hand in hand. The children began to sing again as they continued walking down the street, leaving an irritated instructor behind. Watching everything that happened was Princess Anna, who decided to take a walk around the village before she had to meet Kristoff. Taking in all the sights and sounds of community, along with listening for any gossip about her sister. Elsa returned to the castle with a large smile, as she was carried over the castle walls in her boyfriend's arms, conveniently avoiding the entire town and the many curious villagers waiting for them. Of course, once the two were back on solid ground, the couple still had to answer to the red-headed princess and castle staff. Now, with the dawning of a new day, Anna was making it her duty to tell all the villagers that the queen's date went perfectly. She was doing this, partially, to prevent any rumors from forming, but her main reason was to keep people from going directly to her sister. It wouldn't be good for anyone if the queen couldn't get any work done because she was too busy answering questions about her love life. Thankfully, for Anna at least, she only needed to tell a couple of people about how the date went, and they went off and told everyone else for her, leaving the princess to walk around with only the usual amount of interruptions from the people. Eventually the sun neared its peak, and Anna hurried off to her own date, with her own blonde. Apparently Kristoff had helped Naruto with the preparations for his outing, so the ice harvester wanted to take her somewhere nice. To the princess, this was proof that she and her sister both had great taste in men, even if Anna preferred hers to have the faint smell of reindeer. Break on a dirt road leading out of town, there were two giant mounds of snow, one on each side of the newly cleared road. Each of these piles had been claimed by a group of children, who were eagerly shaping them into forts, getting ready for a coming snowball fight. Has anybody started making snowballs? Ingrid called out, putting the finishing touches on a wall. I think some of the boys have already started, the frizzy-haired Hedda replied. This would have been easier if Naruto was here, someone else said in exasperation. He's busy now, Ingrid insisted. Besides, he wouldn't want us to always rely on him. Yeah. So we have to win this battle for him and Queen Elsa. Hedda cheered in support of her blonde friend, joined soon after by the rest of the group. With me, Hedda the Mighty, to lead the charge, and Ingrid the Wise to guide us, we're unstoppable, the red-haired girl proclaimed. The blonde girl blushed a deep red, both embarrassed from her friend's words and flattered by her confidence. Unfortunately, the group's cheering was cut short when a snowball brushed over Ingrid's head and broke apart against a far wall, causing everyone to crouch behind their frosty cover. Keep throwing those snowballs, a girl from the other group yelled out, leading to a shower of fluffy projectiles. Risking a peek over a wall, Hedda could see the black-haired girl, Sarah, ordering around the group of kids, trying to get them to follow her commands with little success. Only the young Arn, a short, dirty blonde-haired boy, seemed to listen to her after the first snowball had been thrown. So what now? The redhead asked her friend, ducking behind the wall. Sarah's trying to lead them. They'll run out of snowballs to throw eventually, Ingrid replied, grabbing handfuls of snow. Until then, we should stay hidden and make more snowballs of our own. Ah, be sneaky, Hedda said, grabbing her own snow as several others did the same. Just like Naruto taught us. The blonde smiled. The two girls bumped their fists together, confident in their teammates and each other. Break. Alright, Sven, Kristoff yelled, as his best friend trotted beside him, a picnic basket swinging from his antler. Today is the day we once again show Anna how great of a boyfriend I am. That's right, Kristoff, the reindeer replied, spoken by his human companion. You need to show that all the dating advice you gave Naruto wasn't a fluke. I wouldn't go that far, buddy, the ice harvester said, patting his friend's shoulder. It's not like there's a competition between the two of us. While it's true that neither of you are competing against each other, both of you are dating royal sisters. So the villagers are bound to compare you too. So what you're saying is that I would be showing off for the townspeople, and not the people I actually care about. The blonde summarized, receiving a stern nod and a grunt from his friend. But it's only fun if I show off for you, Anna, and our friends. A whinnying laugh came from the four-legged friend, rhythmically patting his hoof against the ground. Then don't worry so much. Take Anna on a date because you want to. Not because Naruto took Elsa out yesterday. You're right, Sven, as you always are. The only thing that matters about my dating skills is that Anna is having a good time, Kristoff enthusiastically declared. Thanks for the advice, buddy. I'll have to share it with Naruto. I can only imagine how much tougher it is dating a queen instead of a princess. The two marched off, continuing to talk as they went. Passing by a set of snow forts, the duo gave a wave to Ingrid and Hedda, who were standing victoriously in the snowball fight that had just taken place. Eventually the two reached the edge of town where Anna was sitting on a stone wall, kicking her feet to a rhythm that only she could hear. When she saw the duo, she gave a large wave as she jumped off the old wall, into a joyous sprint towards her boyfriend. The following picnic was delicious, even if Sven ate all the carrots. Chapter 19. Don't conceal your feelings. Elsa smiled politely as she passed by some of the maids in the castle's hallways. Quickly continuing towards her office, that had been fully moved out of Naruto's bedroom now that he didn't need to be watched over. Stopping by a window, the queen looked past the open curtains, and clenched her hand tightly as she could see another group of finely dressed men walking over the bridge towards the castle. It had only been a short time since spring had started, yet there were already several sets of diplomats who had arrived in the kingdom. Much earlier than they usually would have. No doubt this group, like the previous ones, were interested in the rumors about the fiery beast of Arendelle. Stories from the merchants who left for the winter were spreading around the other nations, telling the grand tales of Naruto's powers, at least the ones they had known about at the time. A man whose mere touch could spark a fire and was capable of lifting a house's roof by himself, were impossible-sounding stories. Almost as impossible as a queen who had control over ice. Now several countries were sending envoys, eager to learn the truth about Naruto, and determine if he was a threat or another reason to keep good relations with Arendelle. That was the part Elsa hated the most. Being forced to use her boyfriend as a bargaining chip to ensure her country's continued safety and happiness. Constantly having to admit that most of the rumors were true, and Naruto was unnaturally powerful. While trying to ensure that he had, and would, only use his abilities to help those around him. Although she always smiled when she got to say that his ability to start a fire with a touch had been cured. Thankfully, the only rumors the envoys had were from before winter. Meaning they were missing some of the newer stories revolving around the blonde. Mainly that he had begun a relationship with the queen, which Elsa chose not to mention unless she was asked. Unfortunately, their ignorance of that topic would only last until they talked with anyone outside the castle. Knowing that questions would be inevitable, Elsa had already declared a state dinner for tomorrow, with the promise that Naruto would be attending. She was already debating in her mind where everyone would sit, wanting Naruto seated next to her, as a proclamation that they were dating. But any further planning would have to be put on hold. The finely dressed men had reached the castle, and would soon be led to the conference room. Another pang of annoyance flashed through her at the thought of having to repeat the same discussion again. Suddenly, a pleasant heat surrounded her body, signifying the presence of her boyfriend. And she only had to wait another second before she felt his arms wrap around her in a warm hug. "What is wrong?" Naruto asked her, holding her against his chest. Of course, the first thing he noticed was how stressed she was. It was one of the parts of his charm that she fell for. "There's nothing wrong," Elsa defended softly, unable to find the strength or will to break free of the soothing embrace. "I was just thinking about something." "You are upset," the blonde insisted. "I can tell. The next few days are going to be difficult," the queen confided. "Several countries have sent people here to check on rumors about me and my power. Naruto finished for her. Elsa could only place her hand over one of his, as she looked over her shoulder at him. Not surprised by how quickly he picked up on the situation. While he was still struggling with the language, her boyfriend was not stupid. He was simple, but that only added to his charm. They're curious if the rumors about your strength are true. I hope they are not too afraid of me, Naruto muttered, releasing his hold on his girlfriend to rub the back of his head. Elsa took the chance to turn around, so she could look at her boyfriend. His deep blue eyes gazing back at her lovingly. They just don't know you yet, she stated with a fond smile. Once they meet you, I doubt they could be scared of you. I hope so, he responded, pulling her back into a comforting hug, which she happily returned. Eventually they pulled apart, both having something they still needed to do that day. However, Elsa wanted to warn her boyfriend about what would be happening tomorrow. Most of these visitors don't know that we're dating, she began, enjoying the thrill she still got when acknowledging their relationship out loud. Tomorrow we'll be having a state dinner with all the visitors, so we can introduce you to them. Do I have to wear a suit? Naruto asked in dread. It would be best if you did, Elsa answered, now thinking about what her boyfriend would look like dressed up. That was now a definite perk to this plan, in her opinion. I will try not to complain too much. He smiled at her. Although, for a moment, he looked away, like he had heard someone else talk to him. The habit he seemed to develop during his stay at the Ice Palace. It will only be for a few hours, she assured him. You're free until tomorrow, so go finish what you need to do, and we'll talk more tonight. I will do that, he responded as he began to walk away, leaving Elsa by herself. Although the hallway was soon filled with more people, several finely dressed men being escorted by a group of servants. All of them were given a polite smile and wave from Naruto as he maneuvered past them. Most of the visitors looked towards him, but soon focused their attention on the queen before them, each intent on impressing the ruler and gaining favor for their own country, while bringing back any knowledge about the rumored fiery beast. Gentlemen, we welcome you to our kingdom, Elsa smiled, doing her best to stay polite. You will have to excuse Naruto, he is on his way to meet with all the children in town. They're going to have a sled race today, and he's one of the judges. The Queen of Ice and Snow tried to stifle a giggle as she watched two of the men hastily turn around in search of the blonde. They probably spent the morning walking around town, and must have heard Naruto's name. Pardon me, Your Majesty, one of the two men called out. A tall thin man, with a pointed beard. We had heard rumors about a man, by that name, who was so hot, that no one could get near him. The rest of the visitors, who were not as well informed, refocused their attention, eager for any confirmation about the rumors, while at the same time being annoyed with themselves for not paying attention to the blonde when he walked past them. It was true, Elsa began. When Naruto first came to Arendelle, his temperature was so high that most people would be burned if they tried to touch him. Only we could even approach him. Thankfully, he has recently cooled down, and can no longer set things on fire with a touch. The dignitaries all nodded at the pleasant news. Each of them revealed that they could return home and tell their rules that there wasn't a monster with fire powers living in Arendelle. Although there were still questions they wanted to ask, but all of them kept quiet, eager to hear more. Yet, even with such a fever, he still insisted on helping around the town as much as he could. The queen chuckled, enjoying being able to brag about how great her boyfriend was. That made him very popular around town, and all the children love it when he visits them. Speaking of, another man, the second of the informed duo, called out, a bushy red beard on his face. The town's children, they sing about a relationship between you and this man. All noise stopped at the question. The other visitors, who did not know, were shocked at the revelation, while Elsa smiled. Yes, we are in a committed relationship with him, she proudly stated. Why should she conceal her feelings when the thought of Naruto made her happy? Wouldn't it be better to share her happiness with everyone? Chapter 20. The State Dinner. I don't think I've ever seen you put this much effort into wearing clothes, Kurama called out from within his friend and partner. I'm doing this to help Elsa, Naruto gave as a mental reply, trying desperately to fix the collar of his shirt. Now that we are off that mountain, I'm looking forward to learning more about this woman who has changed you so much in the short time that I've been resting. The fox barked out in a laugh. Giving up on perfecting his shirt, for the moment, Naruto turned to look through the closed window. A light shower of snow fell from the mid-spring sky, coating the town in a thin white dust. She must be a special person to get you to put up with something like this, using only her words. Of course she's special. She's a lot of fun to be around, and really smart. Not to mention beautiful. Well, yeah, so was Sakura. But Elsa's more than that. Everything she does is for those around her. Whether it's the village, the people in the castle, or even us. She always tries to make everyone happy. Naruto smiled as he thought about his girlfriend, recalling a few of the times when she would take on a task to help someone. And her powers? Kurama questioned, interrupting his partner's musings. What about them? The ability to freely control ice seems to be even more of a rarity here than it was back in the elemental nations. Most people would chase after someone with that kind of power, whether to take it as their own, or ensure it can't be used against them. If there are people like that out there, I'll make sure to protect Elsa from them, Naruto firmly stated. If someone wants to use or attack her, they'll have to get through me first. A thunderous laugh floated through the blonde's mind. You never failed to show why you're the only human I like. Anyone else would have focused on her powers first, and possibly protecting her second. While her powers are cool, they're not what define her. The ninja waited a few seconds before continuing. I don't think you and I can really talk about people wanting to use others for power. I spent over 2 years training for the Akatsuki, and you had it even worse than that, long before I was born. True, Kurama lamented. The two fell into a silence that was neither tense nor comfortable. It was a simple quiet between two friends who had endured a lot, both before they became friends and afterwards. After a few minutes, during which Naruto was able to fix the collar of his shirt, a knocking at his door grabbed his attention. Pardon me, Naruto, but you should head down to the banquet hall soon. Gerda called from behind the door. Thank you, Gerda. The blonde called back. I will be done in a minute. An acknowledgement was said before he heard the woman walking away. Continuing with her many tasks, Naruto liked the head maid. Ever since he had arrived, she had always been friendly with him, giving a kind smile as she moved about the castle, always working on her next project. It had actually been her who helped foster his friendship with Kai, the head attendant of the castle. While the man had a strict adherence to rules and traditions, he also had a mischievous nature that blended well with Naruto's own. With one final look in the mirror, Naruto exited his room and steadily made his way to the dining hall, where many of the visiting ambassadors were anxiously waiting at the table. When the blonde ninja arrived, the only familiar face he saw was Kristoff. Neither Elsa nor Anna had arrived yet. Both of them were intended to be the last ones to enter the dining room. Kai called out a quick, but formal, introduction as the two blondes entered the dining hall. Both men waved politely as they made their way to the table, taking their spots at their predetermined positions. At the center of the table was an open seat, where Elsa would preside over the dinner when she arrived. To the right was another empty chair for Anna, giving a strong sense of unity between the queen and princess. Kristoff took his own seat next to his girlfriend's. This put Naruto beside Elsa's left. A fitting spot, he thought, given his girlfriend's handedness. While few of the visitors would understand, he enjoyed the thought. Presenting, Her Majesty, Queen Elsa of Arendelle, Kai called out after a few minutes, stepping to the side as the blonde ruler strode into the room, her ever-elegant features on full display as she moved through the room, graciously greeting guests as she passed them, or waving to the farther away ones. Eventually she neared her spot at the table, and Naruto stood, holding her chair as she sat, before pushing her towards the table. While he had been unsure about doing this, the smile that Elsa now wore outshone even the eyes she controlled. Meaning Naruto would have to thank Kristoff for the advice. You look beautiful, Elsa-chan, the blonde said in his native language, making sure he was loud to be heard by those around him. Thank you very much, Naruto-kun, she replied slowly. While still not comfortable speaking Japanese, she had been practicing, giving them a way to talk with each other and allow them simple, yet special, moments together. Break It always amazed Elsa at how devious Naruto could be. While she had never been on the receiving end of his pranks, she had heard plenty of stories from the castle staff. But this had been something different. A clear declaration about the relationship they shared, which involved the shared knowledge of an exotic language. Many of the visitors were shocked by the action. Some of them were trying to repeat the foreign words in their head, and attempting to decipher what they meant. One ambassador was even writing down what he thought he heard, and would probably ask someone back in his country to try and translate it. With the soft ringing of a fork against her glass, Elsa addressed the congregation, welcoming them all to Arendelle and the feast. Before giving a short speech about the legacy of trade between all the nations, and how she hoped everyone continued to prosper together. When she was done, she sat down, as the servants brought the food to the table. Beside her, Naruto gave a smile, pleased by her speech. Although she did notice him grimace at some of the longer words. She would have to work on his vocabulary again. Especially since he would be accompanying her to more political events in the future. Soon the clatter of silverware could be heard, as everyone began to eat. With all enjoying the good food, much to the kitchen staff's silent pleasure. Many of the guests gave particular praise to a noodle soup they had never heard of called ramen. Elsa was just glad that everything was going well. Except for one minor annoyance. She was left-handed, and Naruto was right-handed. While her boyfriend was taking his time eating, and putting all his etiquette training to use. The way they were seated next to each other was problematic. Mainly that if both of them happened to stick their arm out at the same time, their elbows would bump against each other. The first time it happened, the two smiled and continued eating. The second time, they realized what was going on, and the third time had yet to happen. Now, every time Elsa unconsciously stuck out her left arm, she saw Naruto's either above or below hers, showing off the speed and dexterity that he possessed. Thankfully, none of the guests noticed the odd display. Or if they did see the two bump their arms together, they chose not to mention it, wanting to avoid insulting the queen. Soon enough dinner was finished, and Elsa stood once more to address everyone. Thank you all for the generous compliments to the kitchen staff. She started. Now we would like to invite you all to the next room, where we can all talk in peace. The gathered dignitaries agreed. Every one of them was excited to have a chance to personally talk with the queen. Or possibly her new boyfriend, and learn how deep their relationship had gone. Within minutes everyone had gathered in the converted ballroom, happily congregated around the tables topped with small cakes and wine-filled glasses. Queen Elsa, this has been a magnificent evening, an ambassadress said. The young, beautiful, and dark-haired woman held a still full glass of wine in her hand, as her sharp auburn eyes quickly traveled over the room. This was Babette, one of the few ambassadresses among the group of visiting dignitaries, and the only one that was close to Elsa's age. She and the queen had been cordial, if not outright friendly, with each other. However, Babette was loyal to her country, and intent on learning everything she could about Naruto. It was a big surprise to learn about your boyfriend, the ambassadress stated, echoing the feelings of many in the room. Especially with all the wild rumors from last year. I never would have imagined that the beast you tamed would be such a handsome man. Elsa laughed politely. We do not know where those rumors came from, but Naruto has never acted like an animal around us. You are very fortunate then. Babette cheered. You've found a good man, but I'm curious about how loyal he is. While a patriot for her own country, Ambassadress Babette was also a known flirt, be it with her hosts or other dignitaries. While Elsa was safe from the other woman's advances, she worried about what the dark-haired woman's intent was for Naruto. Thankfully, he had moved to the other side of the room, where the majority of the guests were gathered, coincidentally leaving Elsa with only a few dignitaries around her. The displaced ninja was busy answering questions about himself and his homeland, with the occasional, unsubtle, query about his powers and abilities. At which point everyone would become very quiet as they intently listened for his answer, eager for any insight into what made him strong. An older diplomat, with a large mustache, stood next to Naruto, listening to the young man's story. Well, young sir, it sounds like you've had quite the adventure, the man exclaimed. And yet now find yourself in the lucky position of dating a queen. Naruto turned to the man, and as clearly as he could said, anyone can date a queen. What makes me lucky is that I am dating Elsa. Many of the gathered men chuckled at the comment, amused by the young man's belief that dating a queen wasn't special. Although some of the older men were touched by the blonde's loyalty to his new girlfriend. Of those gathered, the only one who spoke up in support of Naruto was another young man, who was even younger than the ninja. I have often heard my sister say she wants a man like you for her husband. The boy spoke. His regal attire was perfectly fitted to his small frame, his green eyes locking with Naruto's blue ones. If she were to get married, I think my whole kingdom would rest a bit easier. Prince Rudolph, one of the older ambassadors, called out to the boy. In a few short years you will ascend to the throne, and your sister can step down as Queen Regent. But that shouldn't stop my sister from looking for love now. The now-named prince sighed. I believe that Queen Elsa has set a new precedent, where one's obligations do not distract from finding love. Don't you agree, Lord Naruto? I agree, the blonde responded slowly, making sure that he fully understood the conversation. And call me Naruto. Very well, the prince responded. But you must call me Rudy in return. The two shook hands, as the older guests around them made strained faces at the casual nature of the two. Several minutes passed as different diplomats came around to talk with Naruto, while Rudy stood nearby, listening to the conversation, but constantly looking around the ballroom for something. Suddenly Rudy shifted, moving next to Naruto as he looked across the hall. I'm sorry to leave so suddenly, but I need to go find Princess Anna and her boyfriend, the young prince proclaimed. A nearby older man twitched his hooked nose in annoyance. The queen's sister was near the dessert table, he said with a sneer. I'm sure she has plenty of time to spare. Rudy gave a curt thanks to the man, before he left to find the red-headed princess, leaving Naruto with the hook-nosed man, who he quickly left behind as well, using his ninja training to vanish from the man's sight, only to reappear seconds later with another group of, much more pleasant, diplomats. A couple of hours later, the guests were beginning to leave the castle. Some of them were headed back to the hotels they were staying at, while others made their way back to their ships docked at the harbor, and their private rooms on board. Elsa was standing at the entrance to the castle, seeing off the final few guests. It was so good to see you again, Queen Elsa, Babette the ambassadress cheered. And it was wonderful to meet your handsome boyfriend. Elsa gave a strained smile to the woman. She enjoyed talking with the ambassadress, but was not happy with her word choice any time Naruto was mentioned. It's just a shame that we couldn't have a ball, the notorious flirt cried. It would have been so much fun to dance with Lord Naruto and Prince Rudolph. The Snow Queen withheld her smile. Due to the suddenness of the dignitaries, there hadn't been enough time to arrange a ball, or any kind of dance, which meant she had less things to worry about. Of course, once the kings and queens are told that Naruto is both real, and as powerful as the rumors say, they will want to personally meet him, Babette continued. Elsa shuddered at the unspoken truth. Soon there would be more people coming to Arendelle, and they would expect more than a state dinner. There would need to be entertainment, and a formal dance planned out, which left the young queen feeling uneasy. With a few more parting words, Babette left the castle for her hotel, leaving Elsa in the castle entranceway, with only Anna beside her. And once the ambassadress was outside the doorway, both sisters let out a great sigh of relief, happy that the night was over with no new problems to take care of. Please tell me Babette was only joking about more royals coming to meet Naruto, Anna asked, feeling tired at the thought of another royal ball. Even if she did love parties. Unfortunately, there will probably be another group coming to visit Arendelle, Elsa answered. Thankfully, they won't show up until the summer. At least Kristoff will be happy that Rudy will be coming back. The redhead chuckled to herself. Where is Prince Rudolph? The queen questioned. I didn't see him leave with the other dignitaries. He and Kristoff left together about 2 hours ago to visit Sven, Anna replied. I think they're still in the stable. I never knew Prince Rudolph liked reindeer. Neither did anyone else, but apparently he's as big a reindeer fanatic as Kristoff is, the princess growled. He walked up, proclaimed that I had to call him Rudy, and then stole my boyfriend to go talk about reindeer. He is the strangest prince I have ever met. And I was engaged to Hans for a day. Elsa tried to hide a chuckle at her sister's distress. Prince Rudolph is a strange case, the queen admitted. He's the prince of the Eastern Plains, and younger brother of Queen Regent Annette. However, he is supposed to take the throne when he comes of age in a few years. Then why is he outside the country? Anna wondered. Supposedly, he wanted to see the world and learn about it before he took the throne, so his sister placed him as the royal ambassador of their country. He now travels around the globe, and has been doing a wonderful job of keeping good relations with everyone. Anna hummed, fascinated by the story. The problem is that most of the other countries are putting a lot of effort into keeping him happy, so he'll remember them when he takes the throne. The blonde continued. They treat him as a prince who will one day rule a country, instead of an ambassador. Elsa chuckled to herself. There are rumors that Prince Rudolph is so comfortable being the ambassador, that he might abdicate the throne, and choose not to become king, leaving his sister to rule the land. That sounds complicated. Anna groaned. I'm glad you're around to deal with this stuff, so I don't have to. It's not that hard, Elsa said, nudging her sister. But don't worry, as the princess you have other duties you need to do. Yeah. The redhead chuckled. And I think the first one I need to do now is to pull Kristoff out of the stable. Elsa laughed as her sister walked into the cold courtyard, intent on bringing her boyfriend back inside where it was warm. Although the queen waited patiently for her own source of warmth to return from guiding the visitors over the castle's bridge, ensuring that everyone actually left. And when he did return, the queen thought it would be wonderful if the two of them went to one of the quiet sitting rooms alone, to talk and spend time with each other after the stressful day, with the possibility of getting one of his wonderful massages always being on her mind.